Okay, we are live. So welcome everyone. I'm expecting more of my players to come in. Let's see, Kelly is here. Let me bring Kelly in. Hey, Kelly, how's it going?
Good guys, how y'all doing?
Good.
Long
Good
time
to
no see,
see
brother.
everyone. And,
Beautiful day in the neighborhood. Oh my
good to
God, we got a
see.
live face.
So,
First time he's had a camera on.
Timothy,
Me?
if
Nah.
you want to jump in, Tim, you're welcome in because you were in the very beginning of this campaign, and so I already sent the link out, and so you should be able to get the link from Discord, Tim. So if not, I will send it directly to you. But and then I was trying to find your character on on here. I think I have him, but I'm not quite sure. But I was looking. I was looking for his character icon. So anyway, welcome everyone, and Tim, again, if you can't find it, just look for it, and it should be in there. Oh, I'm getting an alert about the Facebook Direct. Let's see. You have trouble to stream on Facebook. Maybe an issue with Facebook Send. All right, who cares? I'll do it elsewhere. As long as it's streaming where it's supposed to be, we're good. I can always click it on later. So anyhow, welcome everyone to our the Keepers of Quasqueton wrap-up party. So the Keepers of Quasqueton was a AD&D First Edition campaign that we started back in 2021 or late 2021, and or possibly 2022. But it was a campaign that lasted for 108 sessions. So unfortunately, they weren't consecutive, weekly sessions, but certainly over the 2-year mark of running the campaign. And I invited all of my players that finished up the campaign, and then also those that were here in the very beginning, because we had several transitions during the time frame. Really, only two transitions. We started off with 10 player characters, and around week 4, we lost 3 and gained, basically gained 3, fairly quickly, and then we went for probably about 70 sessions before Shadow and Sun came on. So he joined us around, and he probably remembers better than I do. No, maybe it was less than 70 sessions. I think Shadow's been with us for a little over a year.
Yeah, it was when we were fighting the whites, I think, or some other things in that tower with the Rangers.
Yes, yeah, you were doing the Rangers, Airy there, and it was the right after the battle with the white dragon and that demonically possessed magic user that you fought, and you were his captive. You were in one of those cocoons. That was a good way to integrate a new character into the party, and I almost want to say that was session like 48ish or so. So which would stand to reason because you were with us for a little over a year, so that would kind of work out that way. But anyway, let me say hello to everyone that is here, and see. So all right, so Tim, you're going to lurk. All right, so there are some others that have been invited. I'm waiting to hear from Cedric if Ivan can show up. That would be great. And we're going to move on. We're going to start. Just let's have everybody introduce themselves. and then we'll talk a little bit about the campaign. So, Shadow, you want to begin?
Oh, sure. Howdy, folks. Shadow and Sun. That's our YouTube channel. Me and my boy. Most everybody here knows us. Go over to Alan.
All right, Alan, you're next up.
Started in '79 with first edition before there was a DMG out. Backtracked to Blue Book, and have been playing with everything ever since. I dropped anchor on 3.5 because fourth was just depressing. Never went further than that. Been with this group since probably about session 4 or 5. I missed the first few. I took over for the existing Paladin, and according to the curse of first edition, Paladins advanced slower than everybody else. We have dual class characters who are higher in level in both classes than I am.
Until you got the deck of many things, and then
I'm
you
still
jumped
the
ahead.
lowest level.
I kind of helped out a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Instead of being pathetically behind, I'm only marginally behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, you're up.
Yeah, Kelly Foot here. Hey, how's everybody? I've been around gaming, started in 1974 Christmas, so coming up on a anniversary here in just a few weeks. I've worked in the game industry, worked at TSR from 82 through 87, worked on design staff in the RPGA and a few other things. I've done a lot of other projects in the game industry, kept myself involved, got involved in the computer game side of it for a while, but it was interesting. I had played original D&D white box 3-book set and played first and second edition an awful lot, and had kind of played third edition for a few months, and it was not the game I loved. It was too convoluted, too many options, and it was confusing. So I hadn't played D&D since 1987, and when Richard was on a Facebook feed and was talking about starting a new AD&D group, I said, "Hey, let's jump back in it." And I tell you, it's been refreshing because it kind of had that old school feel of, "Hey, we're back into just the basics of getting a torch and a stick and going out and making a name for herself," kind of thing. And it was a whole lot of fun. Unlike Alan, who went through several slow levels, I went the route of a traditional first edition AD&D bard. I did the fighter and then the thief and then became a bard, and so I ended up having a whole ton of a lot of levels, but I didn't really excel in anything. I'm kind of a master of all but nothing. I do very well, just except shoot my bow, and so that was kind of what I was known for, was doing massive damage with my bow. So
The
it was a
howitzer,
great time.
Yeah.
And by the way, the
Actually,
first game I played was in September, first week of September of 2001. So it's been a little over 2 years, 2.5 years.
yeah,
21.
yeah, 21.
Yeah, September
Yeah,
21.
no, it has been. Like I said, we did lose a week here and there, going through just for like vacations and such. But yeah, it was ultimately 108 sessions, so 108 weekly sessions total. So a pretty certainly my longest campaign, at least since the 80s. And actually, the way that I used to run back in the 80s when I was a teenager, we alternated out. So I might have had like 1 or 2 sessions a week, but not AD&D. I was not the designated AD&D dungeon master for our group. I was running Twilight 2000 and Villains and Vigilantes, and then an occasional like one shots of Call of Cthulhu or whatever else. I ran Conan, TSR's Conan, and Star Frontier. So yeah, we were a big mix. So this was my longest AD&D first edition DMing. that I've done, and compared to my second dungeon master in the 80s, he ran AD&D from like 80 to 88 straight. I mean, we played every week with him, so he was much more attuned to the game system and everything. All right, Mirador, you're up.
Hey, well, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in about 81 with the maroon box and the first blue box there. Played basic Dungeons and Dragons, advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then some second edition in college. And then I didn't play any for a while until, well, shortly before this game started. I found some books at a local thrift store really cheap, and I started collecting them again. And then I found your game, and I thought, wow, that's great. I want to play some first edition again. So I played the cleric, or one of the clerics.
One of the clerics, yep. And all right, our space has shifted. Kelly lost his connection. Hopefully he'll get back in. We're with Breeze, empty inside.
I'm empty inside. I played Breeze, the Demigod Slayer, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the other players for joining Breeze on his adventure to glory. That was really nice of you to come along and assist him like you did, even though he did most of the heavy lift, and we all know that.
And I would like to thank you for letting me keep my foot for the entire campaign.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still got dibs on it. I still got dibs on that Lucky Paladin's foot. I will get my hands on that one day.
It was the toe. It wasn't the whole foot. It was the toe.
Well, it started out with the toe.
Yes.
I started out just wanting the toe, but then then I'm like, I might as well take the whole foot while I'm at it.
Well, the best parts were your self-inflicted criticals.
Yes.
Well,
I think Amalric leads that, though. Amalric definitely, hopefully, Amalric is able to make it, but he definitely led in. No one did more face plants than Amalric, and practically killing himself with his own sword, which is a feat unto itself.
And nobody lost more fingers.
Yes, he's lost fingers and teeth and
eyes.
Eyes. Well, Candrius, you lost an eye, and who lost the ear? I forget who lost an ear as well. But yes, it was a.
I think it might have been Amalric.
Yeah, it was probably Amalric lost an ear at one point too. But yeah,
somebody lost a tongue. That was a real hard. I think they were a spellcaster.
Yes.
Yes. But I topped you all. I lost my life. I died and then had to come back. So.
Mirador was the first to have a character die, a main character die, and fortunately, you guys had like incredible memory of what you had in your packs and such, because whoever remembered, hey, wait, we have a scroll of raised dead. I was like, well, that's really, that's really convenient that you remembered that you actually had that. And then it was still a joint effort to bring you back because, you had to piggyback off of each other for the casting of that.
It was actually a group memory because Elmeric remembered that we had the scroll, and I remembered that that I had access to that cleric spell where if me and a bunch of other clerics combined together, we could cast as if we were a higher level, which is what we needed in order to be able to cast that scroll in the first place.
Yeah, and have a chance, a better chance of it being successful, and then Mirador had to. He had to make a second save.
It's lucky that the breath weapon that killed me from the dragon was not fire. Otherwise, it probably would have burned the scroll, which was on my character, and then it wouldn't have come back.
Well, the other thing is we just had great note taking from day one, and great notes on what we killed and all the treasure. I mean, I must say that the team effort there was amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Malric
mean,
was instrumental.
and Vince just joined us. So Vince was Crandon, our first halfling thief in the party, and he was our first near death as well. I'm fairly certain he was the first near death, and so I will have Leah Sparrow is going to introduce herself, and then we'll get to Vince.
I played Sparrow, the druid, and because of being true neutral and everybody else was not, nobody was true neutral but me. But I had to justify why I was hanging around and doing good deeds with this group. And I realized that we had already met a couple of things that needed to not be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose to stay with the Keepers because it was, first of all, we became a group that supported each other, which was very important. And I never felt that we were doing so much good that it did not balance out the evil that was happening around me.
That's
We
for
just
sure.
functioned well together.
Yeah.
I did my part to make sure we did something evil every now and then.
Well,
killing a hostage or two when nobody was looking,
Yeah.
measuring the paladin's foot, things like that.
Yeah, that was really something, that really impressed me right from the get-go. I would say probably by our fifth or sixth session that we had, the party would just always gelled, right from the get-go. Very, very few mistakes were made along the way, and everybody in the group kind of knew what the other characters were capable of. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, some of you remembered who had what in their backpack. It was amazing how much you knew, not only about your own character, but about the rest of the party's character, their characters as well. And it's just something I haven't seen in a long time. And certainly not to this level either. To overinflate, mostly empty inside's ego. But anyway, I mean, it was incredible to watch as you guys moved along as a party and kind of grew. And, at some points, like getting to that point that Breeze was just making, or Empty Inside was just making, was that you started turning into murder hobos in the Caves of Chaos. All right. And that's when Alan first started, the paladin in the group was like, I'm just going to walk into the other room. and that's when usually Vince, who was Crandon, was the throat slitter. He was like, all right, I'll do this work. But eventually Alan came around and he started, quoting, over and over again, nits make lice. And and he was fully converted into not leaving anything behind, because the party did get burnt a few times, all right, with being too merciful with some really, really bad guys. And so
first druid, I knew that was a bad mistake.
Look,
so
if I'm not supposed to kill evil, why is the paladin granted the evil to detect it at will?
Yeah. So now we'll jump to
killing.
Vince, if you're connected, I hope that you are.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yeah. For some reason, my video is saying EOS webcam utility, and I don't feel like putting in the work to troubleshoot it right now.
That was your avatar.
No, that might mean the camera's not supported. That happened with my last webcam.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. It made me use a different browser than normal, and then
Really?
it's giving me the webcam utility thing, and I'm not troubleshooting tonight, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this was actually my first synchronous game in a long, long time. I'd been doing some Discord and other asynchronous games here and there, but this was my first synchronous game in a long time. I really liked it. I thought the party gelled really, really quickly. It reminded me of playing back when I was a kid, literally in the 80s, as opposed to what you see in a lot of modern games now where everybody's kind of like acting on a stage rather than acting as part of the party. But no, I really enjoyed the game. This was actually I think my second Halfling Thief. My first Halfling Thief was either Red Book or Blue Book, and it was actually going into the Caves of Chaos. And that, like I said, that was in the late 70s, early 80s. And this was my second Halfling, actually, second Halfling Thief and second Halfling. So wasn't what I normally play. It was a lot of fun. I said it was a good group, and like you said earlier, very quickly everybody kind of knew what everybody else was going to do and their role in the party, and so the party worked really well. I dropped out of the game, I'm going to say 6-9 months ago, basically because I had another thing scheduled for right after the game that was conflicting with it real regular.
Right.
But no, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, and it was really great to have you in there, and your character made an appearance here and there throughout the tail end of it. Actually, I made an effort to bring back some of the previous characters to do various things, and at one point, Mirador is the only player who actually created two different characters along the way, and it worked out well because at one point Mirador, the cleric, had his alignment changed from the deck of many things type of artifact that they came across. And I'll let Mirador talk a little bit about what happened in that case.
Well, yeah, when the card that I drew changed my alignment from neutral good to neutral evil, and so I was having to try to act that way, but not such an openly way that the party would know, because then so everything that I did was kind of behind the scenes, and unfortunately one of the things that I did was the immediate thought that I had to me was I don't want to change back, and I knew that we had a Helm of Alignment change on a orc that we had charmed. So I thought, well, we better get rid of that. So I disenchanted that so that I could take it off, and I threw it away. And then unfortunately that ended up that the orc went back to his old ways and started. And so when having deaths of innocents on our hands, which we had to go and solve later after the character repented from his time. So
technically, we never did catch him.
Right. That was a side quest that we went to do, but we never
got sidetracked again.
Yeah, well, he got so injured from that run.
we let he's still wandering around the wilderness somewhere.
Yeah, he's still somewhere. He's still in that massive lair. Or at least that's where you believed he was at least seen last, but you sealed off that one entrance into the lair, so that
we left him some pretty good gear too. Right?
What's that?
He had some pretty good gear on him because he was a trusted.
Oh yeah. He had a +1 chainmail and a +1 hand axe, and probably some other nice loot along with him as well. So yes, you guys did certainly treat your orc pet very well. But as soon as that helmet came off and he was no longer charmed, and he was really kind of pissed off because he realized he was charmed, and
I went out of my way to make sure he wasn't comfortable.
Yes. And then, I mean, that's the second time that this party had a charmed character that, just got out of hand with them. The first one was Avante, the Dark Druid, the first Dark Druid that they encountered. And
you wait here. You wait here. You'll be fine. We're gonna go play in the dungeon, and you just stay right here.
You stay in the storage room, and then they come back and they're like, wait a second.
That was the worst blunder we made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charm didn't mean that they just sit there in place and wait for you to come back. It's like he wandered off and then ended up back to where he was originally going, back into the Caves of Chaos, and that's where he was fixed up. He would had the charm removed from him, and then he was really kind of pissed off and decided, I'm gonna start becoming a quasi nemesis for the party as well. Speaking
I
of Dark
volunteered.
Druid,
I volunteered to kill him, but I was overruled.
you were overruled
Many times.
You see, they hadn't.
I was all for it, but yet at the same time, I wasn't a cold-blooded murderer, so I couldn't.
Yeah, you weren't quite. Well, you hadn't gone to the Caves of Chaos yet, so you weren't quite there yet. As far as where where you eventually got to the point, it was probably after the second time that you were like, no, we can't keep on trying to save these creatures. So it worked out there. The orc got away, is now a 4-hit die chieftain, witch doctor. Yeah. No, actually, he was actually higher than that. So I made him somewhat formidable, because just kind of anticipated, the possibility that they would end up encountering him, and so I wanted to make him a nice, unique challenge. For
like a 6-level fighter, I think, or a barbarian type of creature when left him.
He was like a 5th level fighter when he got away. So that's where he was at that point. So, and he might very well have been a half orc, instead of a full-blooded orc. You never really knew that either. But anyway, let's see. So I was going to go through and do some of these things. So just for the viewers and everything to see, and I think that this will come in here. So it was an AD&D campaign that began with B1. What a perfect adventure to really start a new group of players with, and even though they're all vastly experienced, it became a good launching off point for the campaign. And I've only used, during all of these sessions, I've only used three modules, three original modules. I used B1, B2, highly modified them, of course, and then N1, the Cult of the Reptile God. Everything. Oh, I'm sorry, and Dark Druids. Now, Dark Druids was a much higher level adventure. What is it, 8 to 12 from Robert Kuntz, and that when I came across that, you were already into the Dark Druid thing. Like, I didn't even know about that module until we were probably about 60 or 70 sessions in, and the Dark Druids was such a big focus on the campaign. So and that's what really brings us to the next banner that I was going to talk about. So the main antagonist of this campaign were the Dark Druids, who were corrupted, led by the Demon Lord of Pestilence, Nethrexus, and and then the demon lord Sathaga comes later. The frog god comes later, and that second demon lord was added in to make that that were-frog connection. That's where those things were kind of coming in, and I wanted to have a third very powerful creature, very powerful creature put in to first of all challenge the party, because the party was always large, and once they're when you have a party of 8 player characters of levels 8 through 11, the power range on that really pushes it to, like, they're doing those modules that are meant for like levels 12 to 14, and such. So they really can handle quite a lot, especially since the party had always had like 4 healers. So it was like 2 actual clerics, then a druid by that time. Leah had had the ability to heal, and then Candrius, the paladin, also had the ability to heal as well. So it was
I could heal too at the
always
end.
a lot of healing in this party.
Yeah, let's not forget that for the longest time after we encountered the werefrogs, we were almost convinced that the Dark Druids were actually serving Wastree, a deity that we knew about.
Right.
I
think it.
Yeah, you'll actually see a section where that becomes relevant. Like, yeah, you thought that it was Wastree, and to a certain extent it was, but it was a different section of the Dark Druids that was that shifted over to Wastree. You're going to get the reveal. So yeah, my players are going to actually learn a few things during this session as well. And the first person to get attacked by the werefrogs was Cedric, correct? Yeah, I think it was Cedric. Cedric was the first one. It was a halfling lycanthrope, which was another big to-do in this campaign. Was that part of what the Dark Druids was doing was trying to infect demi-humans with lycanthropy, and that was Wastree's connection, because Wastree is a god of bigotry, and he just had a loathing for demi-humans, and he was utilizing the Dark Druids to to push that. He convinced them, because he's also the deity of self-deception. He pushed them to think that demi-humans were not natural, and so they could be neutral evil and not understand that what they're doing was actually evil. So they truly believed that they were balancing nature. So that was another interesting thing that kind of developed over time. That's another thing that I think is important for anybody who's watching, that's a dungeon master or a game master or whatever, and you're running your campaigns, is your campaign is going to evolve over time, and it's going to take different directions and such. And that's why that occasionally you'll have things that that will dead end, or they'll be loose strands of storylines, because the rest of the party has gone in a different direction, or
something more important came up.
Something more important came up, and that's something that I think is really important to push out there to, like, new dungeon masters or new game masters, is the idea that let your campaign kind of evolve as you're going along, and let it go into different directions if it needs to. And then once you implant in your players the idea that their actions and their inactions have consequences upon the world around them. And, that will kind of guide them without you having to, railroad them towards something. Just drop those little hints. Hey, you know what? The first time I did it with them was when they let the hobgoblins actually rose up, and because they didn't wipe out all of the hobgoblins that were in Quasqueton in B1, and they became aware of the party, and so they went off and they amassed a fairly large force. I believe it was like 35 or so hobgoblins, or maybe even more. It was a much larger group, and they started raiding the area, and the party became aware that it was like, hey, we're partly responsible for this. We have to sidetrack and take care of that before we go back and go to the caves of chaos. And so that was that interim couple of weeks that they were spending tracking down those that hobgoblin clan to wipe them out. And I was shocked at how easily you actually took care of them, because at the time you were only like 3rd level, I believe, at that point. So it was you did really well against them.
Well, I think that's where coming
Entangles
together
are-
as a team so early
Yeah.
pays such big benefits, because we, like, when we got into combats or we got into a strange situation, we didn't really have to waste a lot of time. I mean, other than later on when we were like at the very start of the very first round of combat, we'd spend a lot of time talking. But by and large, we encountered a situation and we just started doing our things.
Well, we quickly as a group, because
Yeah.
the maturity of the group,
Yeah.
experience of the group, the fact that we've all played for many years, we took a very direct approach to handling combat and stuff, much
Yeah.
like we were in a D&D open convention.
Mhm.
Meaning that we had what we called standard operational procedures. We approached
Exactly.
every door the same way. We had the people who listened. We had the people who checked for traps. We would do, we just had a method. I mean, and that's the way, we ran it like a military unit, which is, if you were
Yep.
smart as an adventurer, it's what you would do. And because of that, we rarely had any strategical or tactical hiccups, other than letting a few people live who we shouldn't have let live, because we
Yeah.
felt like, hey,
Yeah.
we could convert them with a charm spell. Other than that, we did really well.
Those were
We also
non-combat
used
mistakes, though.
we also used the right hand rule when we were exploring.
Obviously.
Okay, if there's a
Always-
choice,
always
go to the
right.
right. Go to the right.
Always to the right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that actually, when I was, and I'm going to get to Shauner's question in a second. That was actually something that I started to, plan around, was the fact that, yeah, I'm going to put some stuff that's, that is going to be better for them to go left. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, if they do ever break from that there'll be some things there to kind of like say, eventually things will work around if you kept on going through it. But that was in the Orc Lair. The Orc Lair, there was some like really cool stuff that you missed not going left. And then there was certainly some things that you needed to encounter that were to the right as well. So it became, I had to start getting into your heads and saying, like, what do I think the party is going to do here? Not just whether you're going to go to the right, because I always, pretty much assume that, but how are you going to actually, as a group, handle certain situations? And that was something that wasn't always so predictable. And that was another really, cool thing about this group, was that, I kind of knew that you weren't going to make silly mistakes anymore after,
Mhm.
the few that you actually did early on. But, I knew that you were going to pursue certain things and let certain other things slide. And that was, that was usually where you kind of went without, and then once in a while you would really throw me a curve, and I'm like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that, and so that was what was really good about it. Let's see. Then you change it every intersection to be contrary. Yeah. It's like when they start building up routines, then you every once in a while throw them a curveball. So they also had that, the very routine with Vince was usually the point man, right? So the thief always on the point. All right, and
he never went through the door first.
Yep, it was always,
he'd open the door and he'd yank it back.
Check the doors and bump, and one of the first times that they got into a real jam, and Vince's character Crandon was that almost died, was when they went into that storage room, like the tool room in Quasqueton. And I think it was just Crandon the thief and maybe one other player or two other characters went inside the door. Everybody else just hung back, and all of a sudden the orcs that were in that room slammed the door and slid the bolt shut. Yeah. And now these three second level characters were facing something like 8 orcs. And it was close. That's when Vince, his character, took a full scimitar hit, a critical hit across the stomach, taking 8 points of damage in one shot, and he had to make his death save. It also brought him to, if I'm not mistaken, was it -6 hit points? I think that one hit, because I know it's scarred. So it was either -4 or -6. I forget which.
I think it was -4, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, it might have been -4.
But I was immediately bleeding out.
Yeah, he was, and then they finally broke in the door and came in and started fighting, and kind of saved his ass, and then they got into the next big fight when because they just locked themselves inside that place again, and that's when the first time they faced an ogre was when they came to the door, and the ogre bashed his way in, and they had to fight against that. There was two things that
he died with arrows in his heart.
Yeah, but 2 things that I learned about running with this particular group and in the dungeon, and it's probably something I've done in the past, but I was much more conscious with this particular group in this campaign, and that was that dungeons were fully functioning environments. They were alive. There were, you didn't open the door and see 3 orcs just sitting there stationary, I'd say just waiting for somebody to come in the door. They were always moving about, there was always, and that's where we get the wheelbarrow story that's going to come up, because they, the kobolds were bringing a wheelbarrow full of garbage to be dumped into the green slime pit that they discovered and everything. And when the paladin, Alan's character, Candrius, ended up becoming paralyzed, and
thank you, Malric, for that critical hit that put me at -3.
Yes. Well, yeah, that too. But yeah, so when Candrius was paralyzed, and then he was he couldn't move. He needed a full week of bed rest just to recover from his injuries. That's when they remembered, hey, wait a second, there was a wheelbarrow. Let's put him in the wheelbarrow, and we're going to run around with the paladin in the wheelbarrow, so that we're going to get our saving throw bonuses for having him, in the group technically in it. So it was just so much fun. early on in the midpoint, there was a lot of things that took place, levity and such. Now, to finally get to Shauner's question, did everyone survive? Technically, yes, everyone survived. So every player. Now, we lost some player characters along the way. Some players left the group along the way, but of the main characters, there were 28 instances where they had to make a system shock check in order to survive. And if any of those rolls failed, their character was dead. During all of that time, they only had access to one raised dead. So there was, and that wasn't until much later on anyway. So there was a lot of opportunities. They were just very, very lucky with their system shock checks, because I think the most often that they almost lost a character wasn't from being in negative hit points. It was from taking more than 50% of their damage from a single strike. I was using the mass damage rule from second edition, and then I was using the critical charts, the critical hit and fumble charts from Castles and Crusades, which was an incredible
Lethal
infusion into AD&D first edition. I mean, it just added so much flavor to having a critical hits, other than just, oh, you do double damage kind of thing. It just added so much flavor to it. It was probably one of the most fun things that we actually had was, the fumbles and see what happened, and all of the myriad of injuries that everyone had. I'm going to let some of you talk because I don't want to.
Yeah, well, the only thing with the fumbles that I quickly realized, because we were always fighting greater numbers because we were powerful, and there were 10 of us. And when there were 20 opponents versus the 10 of us, they had double the opportunities to get criticals.
Right. Yeah,
and
that's
so the fear factor for me as my character, I thought, wow, my odds of dying are a lot more because of the fact that the fumbles could kill me and take me out. The criticals, and the same factor. I thought, well, I'm better off not using my bow and shooting twice around, because I double my factors for getting a bad critical, and I saw someone die from one. So maybe I should use more spells, because spells don't have a critical failure factor. So there was factors to that I considered, thinking tactically that we really got to be lucky here, because someone will die. We did have a couple people actually die, though. We had to raise, right? Was it two or
no?
one?
Just one. Just one.
Only one official death.
We had a couple that went into negatives and had to be brought back to 0, or they would have died. But
in fact, I think almost everybody, Leah, myself, Candrius, Malric, I think all of those characters, I think at one point went negative and had to be make a system shock check. And of course, I
only had to make as well. One. I got real lucky.
Malric holds the record for the number of overall system shock rolls he had.
Oh yeah.
And he had a 12 con, and he made it every time.
Every time, yeah.
And Breeze was the opposite end of that, because I only had one time where I took more than 50% of my hit points, and I did it to myself.
Yeah, you did it to yourself. Well, what's funny is I went 15 games and never took a point of damage, and I prided myself on it because I had the most hit points of anybody. I was the hit point battery, but yet because I was an archer, I never got touched. And I'm going, I'm like Teflon over here. Nothing sticks to me.
Until you fell in the pit trap. That was the first hit point of damage.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see.
Oh, and Richard, I want to give you full credit for us coming up with the wheelbarrow idea, because you were the one who told us that the kobolds were carrying trash in it. That's when I came up with the idea. We'll just take their trash out and put our trash in.
Yeah. Yeah, it was that was that whole adventure that whole adventure was so much fun. Again, B1, it's so flexible that you could do whatever you want with that, and and it really did launch. I mean, you became the keepers of Quasqueton after about 8 weeks. Like there wasn't there was no real name of the campaign. Again, we get back to, allow things to kind of evolve, as they go organically, and that was another thing that was very organic, right? You became the keepers of Quasqueton once. I thought of the idea of having the white stone and those chips that you were eating in order to, embody those things, and that's where this kind of came from. And so that was something else that came out of that particular adventure, and the fact that it was so open-ended. It's a great module to run as a dungeon master. One of my favorite, as of now, one of my favorite to run, because there is so much you can do with it. All right, so let me get to. So we didn't talk about a patron. So here's the patron of the group, and I was taking a lot from just the lore of Keep on the Borderlands and from Quasqueton as well, and then trying to piece things together. And that's when I came up with making this. I spelled Zajic wrong in this. But anyway, when I started to put together the underlying story for this, I knew I wanted Zelagar, who was just was an evil wizard. Both Zelagar and Rogon were evil characters, from D&D lore, and that's where I decided I'm going to connect Zelagar to Kalb, and Kalb was connected to Zajic, part of the 5 archmages that triple 5, and I started tying in that whole thing, and it just kind of evolved over time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make, because they're all connected to Zajic in some way, and he's the mad archmage, and so I'm going to make them at least appear like they're all out of the freaking minds, and Zelagar certainly did, like, just by the reputation as the party started, like, man, this guy is like all over the place, he was definitely a very chaotic, possibly chaotic neutral, and then he kind of settled down as we got further and further in. And you're about to start to see some, like my players I'm talking to, you're going to start to see some reveals here, but you ascertained his levels and everything because of the lightning bolt he cast. Like, holy shit, he just cast a 22 D6 lightning bolt. It was a damn good thing that you guys did not attack him. I was sitting there and thinking, Alan's going to attack this guy. He's just, the paladin is not going to just sit there. He was like, do I detect evil? Oh yeah, you detect evil off of him. And I was like, oh, please don't attack him. He was fully loaded with all kinds of spells and everything that would have just gone bad. But fortunately, you didn't pull that trigger.
No,
That would have
I wanted to give him the opportunity to spend as many of his spells as possible, but we were too good.
Yeah, it was there were two encounters that I thought could lead to a total party wipe. And that was the Plague Dragon, and that was Zelagar. If you chose to attack Zelagar, that could have turned bad real fast. And the plague dragon almost took 3 of you out in one shot, and that would have snowballed. Because if you lost those 3, then it would have been much, it would have been much more difficult for you to finally take out the plague dragon before. Who was it that hit him with the he will die in 4 rounds? Was that a Malric?
It was a Malric. Yeah.
A Malric. So a Malric dealt him a critical hit that was a lung shot that was going to kill the dragon in 4 rounds, no matter what. So I was like, wow, that's going to really save their asses. And then he hit them with that like 64-point breath weapon. I was like, holy shit, there goes half the party if they don't save.
No,
There was
one of the
there was
4 times I saved in the entire campaign. I made my saving throw like 4 times. That was one of them.
Yeah.
There was one other fight too that we almost got into that probably would not have turned out well. But luckily, Alan held me back and wouldn't let me attack that dragon that stole our horde.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that was another early one where you
I
guys
wanted to. He was taking our gold.
I did too.
brass dragon.
I wanted to take him
fourth
out.
level. Now that wasn't an ancient brass dragon. It was still an adult. It was an
But we were all low level at the time.
We'd have been dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. You couldn't have handled his. You couldn't have handled his breath weapon. So
I looked at that brass dragon and I went, I am not attacking. I don't know if everybody else is going to. If they do, I'm going to help them, but I am not going to attack that guy.
I wanted to add his teeth.
right in the room with us.
Brass
I wanted his
dragons
teeth.
are good. You must negotiate first, always. Always.
I'll negotiate. I'll let him keep some of his teeth.
That's not negotiation according to the dragon. So, we got to study the rules on that. Parlay,
So getting back to some of the background of the campaign as it evolved, and like I said, some of this is going to be a reveal for the party because I kept on just kept on fleshing out these characters more and more as we got deeper into it. So Zelagar manipulated everybody. All right, so he was the big bad from the very, very beginning. But it just kept on, the story just kept on building and building around him. And so eventually, I got to the point where, his whole thing was to become a demigod. All right. And that's what the entire campaign was really about, was his manipulations, both prior to the player characters ever coming together and then moving forward to the point of actually getting them to his tomb so that they can break him free. And I knew eventually they would probably get there and do that. Go ahead, Leah.
I just want to mention that I like the fact that he was surprised that Calb was involved.
Yeah, because and a little bit nervous that Calb was involved because he knew that his manipulations, he didn't want Calb to interfere with anything because Calb would have possibly dismantled some of the black monoliths in a way that wouldn't allow for Zelagar to get back to Quasqueton. That's why that had to be the last monolith, was in Quasqueton, where the last of the the frog god, that demon lord was attached to that one, and that was the whole focus. That's part of the reason why, like, Calb didn't know that you were dealing directly with Zelagar until you returned to Quasqueton and told him, "Oh yeah, we brought Seligar with us back there," and he was probably like, "What?" I was like, "How did you brought him back there?" Because that was the last thing that he really wanted to happen, but he really couldn't hold you responsible for it. So Zeligar had been manipulating all of these two demon lords and eventually Waystry in order to create the black monoliths. And that was his key to absorbing their power and then being able to get the power of the white stone that is in B1 to gain that power. That's how he would ultimately ascend, right? And so he was, but he was trapped. All right, so he was entombed in the temple by the same Dark Druid sect that he had created because they turned their loyalties towards Waystry. And so that's why he was trapped there, was because the Dark Druids had splintered. You had the Amber, you had the Dark Druids, and then the Dark Druids themselves were splintered. That's why he was encouraging you to go kill the rest that were in his tomb, because they were no longer his servants. And I spoke to Zajic right there. So, and then finally, we do the wrap up here. So Zeligar, although trapped, used the monoliths throughout Yeomanry to influence the keepers to free him, banish the demon lords, and then use the white stone of Quasqueton to ascend, which is how it pretty much ended. And now there are still some stories left for this group, and they know at least the pathway to Rogan's tomb. They have no idea, what that actually is and how that's going to move forward or affect the broader things, but they're just about on the verge of entering what is often called like domain play, right? They're all at title level or very, very close to title level, I believe. I know Alan is the paladin, so he's probably one little bit away from that, but virtually everyone else. Well, no, Kelly's not going to be title level because he went bard. So I don't know at what level that becomes title level for a bard.
I don't think you ever really per se.
Yeah, it just becomes bard.
Well, but remember, I had an extra level of fighters, so
yeah.
So I think I was close to fighter title level for fighter.
Oh yeah, if you stayed a ranger, I don't know if you would have been. I don't know if you would have been up to 9 or 10 as a ranger.
I'd been at least 10, yeah.
Oh, you would have been a 10 with ranger?
Oh yeah. Well, because I did 8 levels of fighter, 9 levels of thief, and I'm at like level 6 or so in bard.
Yeah.
And I have enough experience. Well, we didn't.
You had enough experience for level 6. You just have the time.
Yeah, well, no, I think I had enough experience now for level 7.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah. So let's see. Oh, sorry.
Did anyone else have a wish besides me?
Yeah, you never used it. Yeah, you're the only one that had a wish.
No, I did. That was how I got my extra wild-shaped form of sparrow.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, your character almost died before she had the ability to turn into a sparrow, and that would have been very upsetting. I think she was 5th level at the time, right? And you gained that ability at what, 6?
I believe it's 7th level.
Oh, 7th
druid in first.
All right, so then you were 6th level and you almost died. You were almost killed by the ice storm. So that was, that's when you were almost killed, and you ended up getting those scars and everything because you were brought to negative. You were brought to negative
I
6.
think, yeah, I was pretty deep in there.
Yeah, you were negative 6. So yeah, that ice storm really did a lot of damage to you and nearly killed you. And someone I know did a no, I don't want to call it a death save. That's not what they are. They're a system shock save, and they made it by 1 point. They rolled like a 41, and it was like if they rolled above a 41, they were dead. And so I was like, wow.
That was probably a Malric.
No, I don't think it was a Malric. I want to think it was.
I thought he had a really low con.
Was it? Well, the way I worked the thing was that if you were into the negatives, that subtracted from your constitution. You know what I'm saying? So if you were brought to negative, like let's say you had a 10 con, and then you were brought to negative 6, you had to make a system shock as if you had a constitution of 4. All right, the negatives would take off your constitution, and then you would have to you'd have to save at that level or system shock at that level of it. So that was something else.
I don't recall you enforcing that in game.
Say again?
I don't recall you enforcing that in game.
No, I did. I definitely did. There wasn't too often that you guys went to negatives. Believe it or not, most of your saves for death were from taking crits and
Crit damages.
Mass damage from a single shot, but mostly crits. And quite a few self-inflicted crits. So it was like, okay. So let's see. Let's see if there's any questions out there.
That's the great thing about running a magic abuser. You'd have to roll to hit. You don't have to roll any of those damn crits or fumbles.
No, it's the only time that it becomes like pretty challenging is if you're trying to cast spells above your level, and then you have to make those changes. So anyway, you know what I was going to do was I was going to share. Let me do this. Let's see if I can present a share screen, and I want this here. So I'm going to share this here. So I just wanted to go through and just show some of the. So here are all the characters that were at some point in this campaign. Although Tim, I know Tim, if you're in the chat, I was looking for your character's icon, and for some reason I can't find it. But if it's here, let me know. But I'm not finding your character here. But so we had Sparrow, Candrius, Zane, Mirador, Crandon, Bernard, which is Mirador's second character. I could put him over here. I could see he was blinded or something at that point. Breeze, Angus, Amalric. Characters that were in the group. So Cedric was the magic user very early on. Korobar was a druid.
Yeah, he was only in the first like 1 or 2 sessions, and then he left.
Yeah, Korobar left after the second session. Ennis left after the 4th. Word left after the 4th.
Yeah, pretty early.
Urias left soon around then. Cedric left after someplace in the 30s or so.
Wasn't there a dwarf?
And then Tim's character, like I said,
Tim's was the dwarf, I think.
Tim's was a dwarf. Ennis?
No.
Dean was.
No, there was another dwarf.
There was another
Yeah,
dwarf.
he was a dwarf.
Was he the dwarf with swords? That might have been him.
Maybe. I think him and the paladin left in the same session.
Him, then the paladin, like 2 sessions later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Early
That
on.
was the, that was.
I started after all of those. I must have been like the 5th session or something like that.
No,
5th or 6th.
you came in with the 4th session. So remember, I said
Okay.
I lost 3 and gained 3, all in the same,
Right,
all in the
right.
same time frame. So yeah, Korobar was the first to go.
Yeah, I think he was just there for the introductory session, and he tried to get a pet or something, and I don't even know if he made it to the second session.
No, he did, because he picked up a wolf pet on the way to. He picked up the wolf pet on the way to.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
On the borderland. Yeah, so he did
And he
that.
wanted to bring it into the inn.
Yes. Yeah, that was yeah, that was definitely back then. That was in the second. He might have made it about 3 sessions, possibly 4. All right. All right. So how many PCs were there at one time? 10. 10 was the highest it was at one time. It never went below 7. Yeah, it never went below 7. So it was always a very big party. It started initially with 12, but we never played with 12. So in early on we did 2 session zeros basically. And during those 2 session zeros, we had 12, and then a couple players just never showed up for the first session, which was fine. It was certainly the biggest party I've ever, had to deal with, and that's another thing that's kind of a challenge, but it becomes an interesting challenge, because you not only have to keep on compensating for the number of player characters out there, and so it becomes a little bit difficult to craft situations that are a challenge for them, because they tend to steamroll through things pretty quickly, especially since again, they're very experienced, and they know what they're doing with their characters, and so every once in a while, I had to keep on thinking, there's no way that they can handle, I wanted to put them in some situations where it was like, we better leave and, run. And it usually didn't happen that way, because they were so skilled. Like the first time they were, I believe, 2nd level, and their party of 10 were taking on like 36 bandits. And I'm going to forget exactly.
That was a fun fight.
What? But one of them decided that I'm going to cast that darkness spell on the armor of the leader, and so now he's running around, doesn't know what the darkness spell is cast on. So they basically eliminated him, and then the morale of those were broken. We had Kelly was just one-shotting freaking bandits like nothing, and they.
I was crawling
I
through
think
the
the
grass to get
entangles
backstabbed.
helped.
You were doing entangle spells, and sleep spells were just devastating them. I was like, holy shit, they're gonna, they are going to just chew through these, bandits like
Druid
like
spell level 1, entangle.
Yeah.
That was my go-to.
Yeah.
Well, I realized that the archery, taking archery as a proficiency, that was really kind of overbalanced. It really was. I realized that when we were 2nd level, and the door breaks open. Here comes an ogre and about 6 orcs with him, and I one-shot the ogre at 2nd level. And I'm thinking, Yeah, this is a little over the
Yeah,
top.
it's a ranger with that, with that specialization and everything, does become, and at the time I was like, oh geez, this is like it is really overpowered. It is. There are
major.
some of those, there are some of those kinks, minor flaws in AD&D and any game system anyway. You run across these things. I was like, wow, that's really not. That's not working well. That's when you have to make changes. It's like that's when you have to say, you know what, we're gonna change this up a little bit. And I know that we went back and forth over like having a knocked spell. I mean, a knocked arrow allows you to shoot before
Shoot,
initiative, and
yeah,
I was like, nah, there's no freaking way. There's no freaking way I'm doing that.
Basically scratch one enemy basically from the start. But
Yeah,
I thought it's funny
right.
when Alan started calling me the howitzer, bringing the howitzer. But
Yeah.
then what was really funny is when I switched over to thief, all of a sudden we saw it drop and like, whoa, I can't do anything, man. I'm doing like 4 points of damage. I came back to normal,
Yeah.
That was because you couldn't use your longbow. You had to use your short bow because of thief.
And I also I couldn't use my fighter, the special.
Yeah, you couldn't use any of those abilities. Yeah.
Alan called him the howitzer. I called him the kill stealer.
No,
there were quite a few times where I wounded him, and
you were taking too long. They weren't demigods, so you couldn't kill them in one shot.
I know.
So here's a question from the from the chat. So what did you guys think about the group size?
So I was good with it.
I thought it was too large.
I was good with it. I was kind of skeptical at the very beginning, to tell the truth, just because there's so many people. But to me, the difference was that the group gelled and the group basically had the same approach to role playing. So instead of a crowd, you had a bunch of people filling their roles, and the right people were always stepping up. So I actually really liked it, which was not what I expected. I saw we were going to have 12 people before it dropped down to 10. It's like, I'm never going to get any playing time.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah,
but it worked really well.
Yeah, that's the important thing is that there were no characters that really kind of disappeared. You know what I'm saying? Like they're and just not talking and not doing what they needed to be done at any time. There were moments when certain players shined, in their in that moment, but it was never something that was overbearing. Like there were no spotlight players, and spotlight characters.
We had no scene stealers.
Say again?
Yeah. We had no scene stealers, people that come in and take the whole scene and try to steal the whole scene. We didn't have any of that going on. Again, as a group of mature players,
I was going to say, I tried at every opportunity.
We laughed at you a lot, so that was
we laughed at your delusions.
Just comic relief.
Your delusions, yes.
And I'd like to add, in addition to the way we gelled, it was also good that we were all playing vastly different type of, not just character races or chosen classes, but we were playing different characters. And I've been in other groups before where you have 4 or 5 people and everyone wants to be, the frontline killer, and it's, I'm big, strong, so therefore I'm stupid. There's so many common roles that people bring into D&D, but in this group we just had a vast diversity of characters.
Leah,
I want to point out that we were mature players who were not vying for, I gotta be the first, let me do this, no, we took our time, we let
100%.
others shine, and we all got our chance to do something.
Yeah.
Well, we weren't playing
I think-
Pathfinder.
Yeah, I think also it helped to have a combat sequence, ranged spells, melee,
Yeah.
and then second attacks. By having it like that, we knew where our point was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if we needed to get a spell off before ranged went off, we mentioned it ahead of time. Or, let me get this out there so that they're held.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Like-
everybody else can shoot them,
Like
pin push
West,
them
for example.
inside the
Or
into
ice
angle.
storm, or ice storm to let you guys know that it's going to get slippery, so you may want to hold off.
Now,
Yeah.
the only thing I would say about the party size of 10, from a game balance perspective, it's so hard for you, Richard, to be able to balance that and plan for that, because typical party size is 4 to 6 and everything is kind of geared towards that. But it's even more so when you got 10 players that play well together. So you were trying to scale for a party of 12. And so I'm sure that was difficult, because it did seem like to a certain degree we steamrolled a lot of stuff because
Right.
of the way we played. And I know that's a little frustrating, for you, but for us it was kind of fun. It was like we felt larger in life. We kind of felt like like superheroes in a fantasy world.
Yeah, well, that really launched off. That whole perception like really took off in the second session when you defeated those bandits, and it was like, I was like, wow. I mean, you created a reputation for yourselves, and I was like, all right, cool. That'll work out well. Like I said, there was, when we talk about the balancing and the challenge, being presented, when I look back at it and I look, we had 108 sessions and 29 instances of possible character death. So it really ended up being, or 28. It really ended up being like 20% of the time, or a little bit higher than 20% of the time, there was a chance that a character was dying, and so, once I started seeing that and started to see that, it doesn't have to be these big bads. And like you mentioned earlier, Kelly, it's like, when you're fighting 25 orcs, those 25 orcs have 25 chances of rolling at 20, and and I know Alan brought this up, quite often, and was like, well, crap, the only time I get hit is with a crit, because he had a -5, he had a -5 AC, and it was like, yeah, it's like, that's just the way it is. Anytime you're getting hit, it's a crit.
I think the other thing that was kind of interesting about a party that size is, other than me and one or two other people occasionally scouting ahead, the party of 10 never split the party. We never took on things.
Yeah.
We never took on things as 2 or 3 or 4 players.
Mhm.
We almost always took on things, as the entire squad.
Yeah, and it's there was the only time, even when you got separated, like when Candrius was teleported, when Breeze force fed him the chip, and he got teleported to a different room when he was paralyzed, and incapacitated from, and then you were going to feed him this chip, and he ended up getting teleported. And thankfully, I don't know who it was, but someone says, I'm going to cast a detect good, and Andreas, we're going to be able to find him as long as he's within 120 meters of us, or 120 feet of us, and we'll just keep on. And that's how they found him. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this group of players are so experienced, and they just have such a knowledge of their characters and of spells and different things, that when they did get separated, they knew exactly the solution in order to find somebody who disappeared. Go ahead, Alan.
You missed telling them that when I got teleported out, it was into a lair full of giant spiders.
Mm-hmm.
And had I not been paralyzed, they would have attacked.
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, you were
Immobile.
in that corner, and I think there were like 3 or 4 giant spiders, and and I forget who it was. It might have been Cedric was the one that fireballed them. I was like, oh geez, he's gonna like fire. No, it wasn't a fireball. He used a was it burning? Someone
Burning
used
hands.
burning hands, I think, on the spiders and everything. I was like, oh, I was like, if they get too close with that or whatever, it could end up killing you as well if all the webbing went up. Yeah, it was just a really interesting way to watch 10 players just make these decisions based on what abilities they have, what spells they have, and just make like strange, like unexpected situations work their way out. And so the challenge wasn't always like, oh, let's just throw a whole bunch of HP sucking stuff at them. It was let's throw some situations where they're going to have to think their way through it, and that was the other aspect of it that I really enjoyed doing with this party, because it was the fact that, yeah, sure, I could have thrown a whole bunch of throw 6 Umber Hulks at you, and yeah, your numbers wouldn't have helped you at all. I mean, you actually struggled the one time that you faced an Umber Hulk because he freaking confused like 6 of you, and it was like it all came down to like 4 of you to fight off. And I know Alan was just pointing to himself. Alan had a real problem with fear spells being cast on him.
Saving throws in general. Any saving throw. I think I made 3 or 4 the entire 2 years.
Yeah.
I had that summon insect spell that I had just learned.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to fight the Umber Hulk without seeing the
Right.
eyes.
Yeah, and that that was a for a game or for a dungeon master, insect swarm is the reason why I made the plague dragon have his scales oozing that decaying aspect to them, because I anticipate, I was like, I know Leah's going to cast an insect. I'm not having this thing defeated by a freaking first level spell. So I was like, nope, she's going to watch her insects just.
No, I was like 2nd or 3rd level.
Once they get to this thing, they're going to dissolve. I was just so anticipating it, and I know that that's probably a oh, that's not a good dungeon master if you're working against the party. But like, sometimes you have to subvert the easy way out, and so I don't have a problem admitting that. I was like, no, he's gonna be able to kill her spell off, like no problem whatsoever with this thing here. And yeah, it was like every once in a while you have to change things up. You have to subvert, what you have to, subvert those expectations of things. Like, I gave you monsters that were different than what they were in the monster manual. That's where I came up with the Snow Whites, which at the time I didn't even think of. I was like, oh, Snow Whites. I never even connected. Oh, I just named them Snow White,
That's what Amalric coined that term.
Yeah. So this was like Arctic whites, and they just had a different aspect to them, that instead of draining your energy when they hit you with the They had almost like a mauling thing where they're, the cold emanated from their mouth instead of a bite, and it was like a freezing damage that it would do to you, almost like a breath weapon kind of thing that that would sap up your kind of your hit points in that way. And so it was, again, just such an enjoyable time. Speaking of something that you guys did, record keeping was the log. You kept a journal of every single creature that you encountered, and and every time that you did that, it was always like, oh, you're going to gain a little bits of knowledge along the way that your character will now have access to, because that was another thing in this campaign that I really tried to emphasize, was character knowledge versus player knowledge. And and I think that's something really, really important for new game masters to also consider, is to make it where the character's knowledge is more important than what the players know about the game, but what do the characters actually know? And that's why it was nice to see that you guys, in your role playing, your characters knew like the background information of other characters. So it was like, hey, aren't you the aren't you the one that has at least two of you had tracking, and you always remembered, oh, I can track, he can track, I know she can track. And then
Brandon, and I forget who the other one was.
Yeah,
I could track.
Angus.
Yeah, Angus. And
plus I had hunting, I believe.
Yes, you had hunting, which came into that same kind of category. Breeze, we always knew could do the like sewing and patches, and he role played that out like in the very beginning with starting to collect all those patches of the different deities, symbols and everything.
I think also his sewing our tabards.
Yes,
really gave us a sense of, this is a troop.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just a couple of assholes hanging out together.
Yeah,
this would have been a great time to showcase those magazine covers.
Yes,
that Mountainside was doing.
I could actually do. I don't know if I can link and share.
Those were awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say one of the things early on, we acted like we were lords even at like 4th level. We took on the title and had our own keep and knew what we were doing. We all acted like we already had hit name title.
Let's see.
I loved that Honor Among Thieves cover.
That was good.
We were the ultimate fake it till you make it group.
So here's the final total. Thinking of things that were on there. So here's the final total of the characters that finished up, in case anyone is interested in seeing it. So we have Blaine, who was a Malric. He finished up as a 8th level fighter, 9th level magic user. And was he about to level? He was
capped by strength.
Not sure. Yeah, he needed strength to level up beyond there. But here's all the characters, so we can see where they all finished up. Mirador was a 9th level cleric. His second character, Bernard, was 9th and 8th level thief illusionist. Vince finished up as a 10th level thief. Andrew, who was empty inside. I originally used to say Mountainside. I thought that was your thing was Mountainside. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It was like, no,
it is on Mountainside.
Inside. Right.
It has that double meaning for a reason. Like Alan said, I live on a mountainside, and you know.
So Kelly, you were a fighter 7, thief 8, bard 3, but you had enough experience to be bard 9, Um, Alan Paladin 8, which is the equivalent of everybody else being what levels they are at least. Leah Druid 11, and Shadow and Sun Magic User 10. So yeah, everybody really did get up into the levels. Let's see if I can find some of those. I'd probably have to scroll back
Oh, last year.
far
Yeah.
to see those. Oh, here we go. So here's one of them.
Yeah, that was Breeze's character.
Yeah. So Breeze started putting out these campaign magazines. So this was issue number 38. So August 30th, 2022. So that was one. It was pretty cool. This is when you were fighting those almost like
The amphibian things.
frog things. Let's see what else we have here. I mean, you can see just like the long history of what we were doing here. Let's see. Yeah, we have to go back quite a ways, I think, to get to some of these other ones here. Oh, was that way? Yeah, here's one. This is when Candrius lost his eye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was an orc shut out his eye. So.
Oh, it was a goblin. It was a goblin.
Or goblin. You're right.
Yeah.
Goblin shut out his eye.
That goblin should have leveled up right away.
That was back in June.
Yeah.
That goblin leveled up right away. Let's see what else. Also, here are some of the orcish deities symbols, and I'm sure Breeze collected those.
Oh yeah, every one of them.
This is when Candrius. I was like, Candrius, this should be how you retire. You should have never fixed your eye. That's such a good look. Let's see.
There's Crandon.
So there's Crandon. There is
I love that cover.
Yeah.
You're a thief.
And let's see. I know the one with the teddy bear. No, I'm thinking that's when Sparrow was almost killed.
Yeah.
Was the teddy bear one. I'm waiting to get to that one.
Yeah, I that was one of my favorites.
Yeah. That might have been like it wasn't the first one, but it was certainly close to the first cover that you did. But yeah, that was a great one. I want to find that. Actually, I have to go scroll. So that's when we came up with the symbol.
Banner. Yeah, that's the banner.
And there's the red herring.
The
red herring. Remember, Breeze kept leaving those behind whenever we killed somebody. It's a hair tie, so it was a red herring. A red herring. You know.
I see. Let's see. That's when you fought the ogres. The last thing Amalric saw before getting brained. Yeah, that's when they almost killed him with a club. They clubbed him in the head. In that same fight, he broke his teeth.
There we go. There's Amalric.
Yep, there's Amalric. Right.
And there's another cover.
There's another cover.
I think that was that was the cover from the very first episode because because it's talking about lighting the candle.
Candles, yes.
Yeah, first you tell us to light a candle, now you want us to save the world. That escalated quickly.
Yeah. Was that the first one? No, I still didn't see the teddy bear.
Yeah, I don't think I posted them all. I think I reposted that one because somebody had asked about it.
Oh,
So that was a reposting.
I see. Yeah, I want to find the teddy bear. That was a nice one. Here's
That
another
was the
one.
original time you posted it.
Yeah. All right, so that was the original. And gosh, we're going back. Let's
So
see
we
what
were all chatty.
what session was this? This was session 57.
57.
So
That's
let's
1
see
year
if oh, Shadow was there in 57. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Shadow came in.
There's one.
Where's
No,
Oh,
that's the same one.
you kept on posting yours. Odd.
He is a demigod
Well,
killer. He's got
because you
Let me
well you kept
remind everybody how often.
you kept asking about Breeze's armor, and so I'm like, why? Yeah, here's the picture.
Yep. So this is session
54.
and he's already there.
Mm-hmm.
I should have kept this thing at full. Did someone just try to join? Let's see. Oh no. Oh yes. Amalric.
Greetings.
Sorry, Amalric. Hey.
How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Greetings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this much? I'm trying to
it's
figure out how to
gonna
turn on
take
my
a good
video.
part to get there. But yeah, I
We
want to
missed you.
bring everybody in. So so welcome aboard, Amalric. Good to have you. We are just reminiscing and going back and taking a look
Yeah.
at some of the some of the cover art that Andrew was producing for the Keeper of Quasqueton magazine, which
And I posted a link in the chat to the original video that I did of the original crew. I did that one really early on. That I think that was like around session 10 or so, when everybody had chosen their avatars, and I just threw together a little video of it.
Oh, where is? I don't see the link. Or is this a link? No,
Yeah, it should be right there in the chat.
I don't see it in the chat. I see that it says this. That's it. Oh, do I have to click on the M?
It should be above that. I see it on mine, but
no. Try putting it in. Try putting it in the public. Try putting it in a private.
all right.
Try sending. Yeah, put the link in the private, and then I'll run that.
How do I put it in the private?
There's a private tab. It says comments and private. You click on private instead of comments.
I only have live chat or top messages.
You could use your present screen and play it on yours. On your computer.
I'm on my phone.
You know what? Put it in Discord.
That I could do.
Yeah. Yeah, put it in
Yeah, let me fire Discord up on my PC here.
yeah. And then once we have that, so some other things that the party did that was really really helpful. I don't know if Tim is still on. I think he probably is, but Tim was originally he was our cartographer. He was making those maps, and he was so good at actually capturing the maps, until I started just using Roll20 to do that. But so he was our map maker. Malric was always the keeping track of the experience points and all of that stuff. I mean, that was just unbelievable amount of help. I could have never done it, without his assistance there. Oh, I don't see a Malric in now.
Yeah, he fell. He must.
He
He
fell
dropped out.
All right.
Oh, it says he's backstage, so he guess you have to relet
I
it
gotta
back in.
scroll down again. All right, let's add. All right, there he is. Hey, how's it going?
Let's do it.
So let's do it. So let's see. All right. So, now I got it. And Kelly's still in Europe. Yes, Kelly is still in Europe. So you're in Spain now, right, Kelly? You're muted.
Yeah, it's 4 a.m. here. Look at my hair.
I was gonna say you look like you've been at it for a while.
Yeah.
Well, my hair was decent until I moved my headset, but yeah, I had. But yeah, it's 4 a.m. That's fine. I'm still wide awake.
Kelly, you gotta be drinking the liquid intelligence coffee like I am.
I don't drink coffee, unfortunately. So I go by natural energy, which I have fortunately a lot of.
Oh my gosh. How do I get to the most recent?
Breeze posted the.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get. Oh, there it is. All right. So now.
So you're doing some recap there. A little. Gosh, brings back memories just talking about this. Really for Shadow and Sun and you came later, and you still were in 58 sessions or something like that.
Yeah.
So, pretty amazing. But I originally was not doing the experience, and the poor GM just kept posting and recalculating and posting, and it felt like the first half hour of like the first few sessions, everyone's like, was it 200 or 250 or 300 or 200? And we just weren't gaming enough. I was like, okay, I'll just take this off the board, send out everyone's experience.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the game, you were giving us like a session rating and basing our XP on that session rating. And we did so well so long, we're like, why don't we just like give us a set amount every time instead of doing the set rating, because it was complicating things, and we were usually doing pretty well anyway. So we just kind of dropped that mechanic.
What he was doing, Shadow, and Mirador had a great solution. Is I liked what the GM did for training expenses. It's actually super crazy expensive if you go by the AD&D rules, but there's a range you can do, and the GM would give us a rating per session. And if it took us 5 sessions to level, he would average that, and that was the multiplier effect of what it would cost. For the training. It was
so he
crazy.
wasn't using the 1 to 4 weeks thing.
He was, but that's how he calculated. So if you were like,
for example, it was based on your session rating.
If you had if you had a rating of a 1, which is the top score, you would get at the end of 5. If you had an average of 1, it'd be 1 times 1,000. But if your average rating was a 4, it'd be 4 times 1,000. Anyway, it was what it was. Mirador finally said, let's just take the average of what we had for the last 20 sessions and call that a day. And it was like 1.25.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that I was trying to do, following AD&D, and again, if I had 5 or 6 players, it would have been one thing. Trying to do it with 10 became like, wow, this is, although I still wanted to, that's why I started to say, like, listen, after 5th level, you could start training people, and you could start earning some money that way. And then once you get to 9, you no longer need training anymore. It's like you can train yourselves at that point. And so, there were a lot of things in 1E that make it challenging. Especially with large groups. I'm going to share this video so so we can all watch this, and I don't know if you're able to hear it or not.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Sounds good.
Yep.
This was Breeze's artwork. I love it.
Yeah.
The music, though.
Even back then, he had 1 arrow is enough. Yeah. All right, that was really cool.
That is cool.
That was really good.
Hey, I have a question for everyone here. I've always been curious. So, when Richard first put out a call, gosh, over 2 years ago, and he actually not only advertised for AD&D, which can be a popular request, but he specifically advertised it for a 10+ player game. Why did you guys join? I'm curious, and I'll start with me. I was in Richard's pre-campaign, and we were playing a different rule set, Labyrinth Lord or something like that. And there was only like a handful of players. I want to say 4. And Richard was great. I loved playing with him. I had a Malric there. And then he's like, hey, I'm going to roll this into AD&D, and it's going to be like 12 players. And I'm going to come clean. As a rule of thumb, I never join campaigns more than 7. I mean, I've never seen it successful more than 7, except in Traveler at cons. But I like Richard, and I'm like, I have to stick around, and I won't lie to you. I said, this is just going to be a total cluster F. I have to see this play out. And so I stayed on, and I kudos to the players, right? Because you guys really made it work. I think everyone recognized the number of players, and we all were relatively respectful of each other's time. And my brother, who's a big player, would always say, like, what did you think? Why are you playing a game with like 10 players? I was like, I call it story time. I just listen. It's like I say my 2 cents every once in a while. You guys can drive the action. It was great. But I'm curious, what do you guys think? How did you guys ever join a 10-person game at the beginning?
Because it was 1E.
Yeah.
Well,
Was that
well
simple?
for me, I was wanting, like I said, I hadn't played first edition or really D&D since '87, and I've been in a lot of long-term campaigns. I've run. I have a Deadlands campaign I've run at least 3 times a month since 1995. So I'm used to long-term campaigns, but what was interesting is the fact that Rich and I were friends on Facebook. I knew he had great respect of the old school role playing, and he just had a understanding of what he thought would make a good game. And I thought, well, hey, let me jump in and play some D&D. I haven't played in a long time.
I posted some more of the after that video there for you to get a quick and easier access to.
Nice.
Okay, to those. Amalric came in. Amalric came in with a Word, who was a magic user there, and he was our first magic user here.
Right.
And he came in with Kimmel, right? Kinnel. Word, Kinnel. I think those were the only 2 that came in from the D&D. It was D&D Beckme that we were running.
It does matter because the guy who plays Word, he's prolific on Roll20. You see him everywhere. He always plays a magic user. He never plays anything but a magic user. He's a very good player. But once you said we're playing like 10 players, he was like, I'm out. He
only left. I think it was overwhelming for him to have that many, because when it was just you, him, and one other player, forget who the other player was. The other player played a halfling, if I'm not mistaken, in the D&D campaign that we're running, and we did that D&D campaign for, I want to say we went about 12 weeks or so. You guys made it to 4th level.
Yeah, I have the stats somewhere. No surprise.
Yeah.
The sessions.
Yeah, I forget exactly because I don't even have that Roll20 framework there anymore that I could go back to it and take a look. Someone was Jarrowhawk. I forget who.
That was the guy that Word played Sparrowhawk. Yeah.
Oh, so Word was Jarrowhawk. All right, so that was Word, and it wasn't Innis that was with us though.
But I'll tell you this: what was interesting is we first had 10 players and didn't know any of them. And Mirador knows the story best. And 2 or 3 of you joined. I think Alan, Leah. I think you joined like 3 or 4 sessions in.
Yeah.
And we had 10 players, and actually they were all good players. The 3 or 4 that dropped were good players. But they remember Mirador? Tell the story about the player squabble over the tune thing.
Yeah.
I won't lie to you, it was actually highly entertaining, even though we lost 2 good players over an argument.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was.
It was just a.
Poor Richard's he's trying to GM 10 players, and now someone's like, "Why are you calling it a tune?" That's what they call them in games. Well, don't
in
I
video
don't call
games.
That,
That's
don't call it a tune. Well, I'm freedom of speech.
It's just a.
It was
It was a weird thing. It was a strange thing. But unfortunately that we lost. Players over it, and sometimes with a large party like that, I can see it. I mean, I've had like worse situations where when my D&D campaign before this, and I don't know if you were in that one, Amalric, but I'm trying to remember. Maybe you were in that one, because were you in the Carador one? I think you were.
I was in your thing called the Orbs.
Oh, the Orbs. All right. So that was much shorter.
Yeah,
that was a much shorter campaign. So my Carador campaign was the one where Word came out of as well, but he might have been in the Orbs one as well.
He was.
I'm talking about the one with the guy was playing a half elf, a female half elf cleric. That and he kind of derailed. He was one of those spotlight players, and like I said, I'm really glad that no one in this group, and really to be lucky enough to have 10 players and nobody is the spotlight kind of player is a feat in itself, I guess, or just a blessing in itself, is that no one was really demanding the spotlight. You guys really did mesh well and fit your roles. That's another thing. Like, I know there's some people out there that will argue over what is role playing, right? And there was like, oh, you have to be in character all the time. You have to do this. You have to do that. Go ahead, Leah. You're muted, by the way.
I wanted to say, you were asking how all of us got in.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Alan basically texted me and said, "You want to join a first edition campaign? Tuesday nights?" Okay, that's how I got. It was first edition, and I was in.
Yeah, and for me to answer that question, why would you join a group with 10 people? I didn't know it was going to be 10 people when I joined, because at that point you were still finalizing the because I was in the initial 0 session. You were still finalizing the cast of characters at that time, so I didn't know it was going to be 10. But it didn't take me long to realize that I was going to stick with it.
Hey, I just saw a post from Tim Shanks. He's the guy who played the dwarf who lasted 3 session. Tim, we missed you, by the way. I thought you played a fabulous dwarf. In fact, I think the other guy who played a paladin was pretty good too. It just was very disappointing. I will say this: I've said it before. When Alan and Leah joined, so one of my most impressive moments was Alan. Listen, we all had fun with Alan and his paladin being paralyzed and non-responsive. But think about this from a player perspective. He doesn't really know us. It happens really early in the campaign. and then he plays it true to a player. He actually doesn't talk for like 2 sessions. Like he doesn't say a word. His character is paralyzed.
What can
And I'm
I
like,
do?
a lot of people join me like, I'm here to play a game. I can't just sit on the sidelines. But he took it like he's like, Paladin's paralyzed. I'm just gonna sit here and anyway, Alan, kudos to you. I was like, wow, that's a pretty interesting, pretty good player to.
And I'm still trying to remember who invited me in. I don't know if it was you or somebody else, but I got to chatting with him from a D&D group, and here I am.
Yeah.
So, yay! Great luck for me. I'm ever grateful.
Yeah, no, it was, and I give a lot of credit to Shadow as well, because he had the courage to come in to a campaign that was over a year old and then just room right into it.
Well, you needed a magic user. There's nobody better.
Just settled right in. Just settled right into it without skipping a beat, really.
Yeah.
And that's because others were like, nah, I don't want to jump into a campaign that is this long going and you didn't have an issue with that, and so I give you a lot of credit for.
Well, we'd met through our YouTube shenanigans, and I'm a pretty good judge of character, and not only did you offer me, we need a magic user, but I didn't have to slog through the first, like, was it 6 or 7 levels?
Right.
That's something I've learned. Like I've seen, I will start someone with 1 level below, right? And so you do have to do a little catch up, but it all balances out in the end anyway.
It's a 10th, which passed up, a lot of the other folks that have been through. Magic users don't really need a lot per se.
Yeah.
But
you didn't have to do I did my 1 magic missile. I'm done for the day, guys.
Thank
you.
you.
Have to do that part.
Yeah, there was
constantly hiding behind the paladin or the other fighters. I could take a little bit of damage, but not much. And believe it or not, I didn't want to say anything until it was over. But I didn't take a single freaking point of damage for the last 4 or 5 months. I think. Yeah. I was just like, screw this. I got a familiar now. I was just waiting for one of those area effect spells to just poof. My cat, was just, in my vest pocket or whatever. Just, forgot you got a familiar, which would have been, permanent loss of double the points and all that. But, I got to do my magic userly stuff. And if, now I regret saying this, because if Richard decides to, bring us back into the fray, he's going to go right after my poor cat.
Well, so Shadow.
Well, only Cedric's familiar got turned to stone.
Yeah. I thought you played that brilliantly, Richard, because he overused it as a magic user. Like, I'm like, he's going to get in trouble. He used it on every exploration in the caves. I'm like, okay, this is not good. And I can't. Who remembers the story? All I remember is it didn't die. All of a sudden, he said he lost contact with it.
It was paralyzed by the carrion crawler.
No, I thought I got turned to stone.
No, it was. Well, there was the one time early on when it flew through the teleportation room.
Wasn't it the basilisk?
Basilisk.
It was
a Dracolisk.
Yeah. It was turned to stone while it was in flight, so it fell and shattered.
It didn't shatter. He made it make a save roll for this. It didn't shatter basically enough, so he was
just
able
some chips.
to turn it back.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have lost it if it had shattered. But he was able to get it returned back from stone. But he had to pay a lot of money to do it, I think.
Yeah, he was super cautious.
And Mirador never got a chance to go back and try to save the cleric of Forlagen, who was turned to stone.
Right, we found a cleric of Forlagen in the one of the dragon slayers, but we didn't have the spells at the time. Now we have scrolls of stone to flesh, but we never got back there.
I forgot all about him.
Yeah.
Don't worry about
I
the
remember
roll.
us
I've
leaving
got
him
a
and saying
potion for that.
we'll come back for him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well-
how about we each mention a moment that we liked? Do you want to do that?
Yeah. We'll go. We'll kind of go counterclockwise. So we'll start with we'll start with it's not counterclockwise. Clockwise. Shadow. Go ahead.
Oh man, can you come back to me?
All right, sure.
Think.
Alan.
Oh God. There's several of them that I really enjoyed. Believe it or not, the bandits with the 36 bandits, we took 8 back alive, which, as a paladin, I approve that message. Killing the white dragon at the Ranger's Keep, that was our first real dragon kill. So yeah, that's what the game's all about. Kill the dragon, take their gold.
Yeah. So Breeze or Empty Inside.
For me, it's actually multiple moments, but it's all on one cue. I mean, whenever I play, I always try to inject my odd sense of humor into situations, and luckily the group rolled with quite a few of them. The paladin split, Breeze being a demigod slayer, which was all a misunderstanding, but he didn't believe it. It became fun banter just going around and keeping those moments from the past alive.
All right, Mirador.
Well, Alan mentioned one of them. The moment with the bandits when we were like second or third level or something really low, and we were outnumbered like 3 or 4 to 1, and we all we pulled out things that you didn't expect. I think a little bit. We threw sleep spells, we threw entangles. Mirador threw the darkness spell on the leader's armor, and so he was riding around in darkness, causing chaos everywhere. I think that was very fun. We managed to overcome something that was pretty difficult as far as numbers, and we did it as a great team there.
Yep. Sparrow.
One of the things I remember about that was, I believe that was the first time I tossed my first entangle, and that was like immobilized an entire group. I was like, great, and everybody was coming up with something that would work, that would help. Some of you were doing the ranged attacks. We had magic going. We had clerical magic going. I mean, it all gelled together, and I was like, this is going to work. But my favorite moment where I was able to shine was being able to wild shape and do the reconnaissance that we weren't going to throw a familiar out doing. But I'm a PC. I can handle this. But being able to fly over or slither under or something like that, just being able to be out there and doing what a druid does was kind of nice to be able to shine for a moment, That's it.
All right, Kelly.
Yeah, I had several moments, but I enjoyed the banter of the silliness and the fun that we put into the game. I mean, we didn't take it 100% like, oh my gosh, serious, but yet when it came to combat and things seemed like they were getting tight, everybody really pulled together. But that again, that encounter we had in the keep when we were second level and we were trapped in a room recovering from being wore down after going, from one end to the other, and all of a sudden in busts this ogre and all these orcs, and I one shot of the ogre. I realized we had a party unity because that's when we really started working together well as far as being organized and knowing who would take what responsibility and what roles. But just the overall experience was fun because, again, just a bunch of great players having fun. I didn't know any of you all prior to playing, and it's been a great pleasure for the last couple of years. And thank you, Richard, for organizing such a good game. And I joined because, again, we were buddies on Facebook, but we never played together. So we talked about experiences at conventions and different things. So, really, I'd say the overall game, just the whole thing was fun. There was not one experience other than that moment that kind of I felt defined us as a group.
Right, right. Yeah, that was a really important that was a really important event for several reasons. I think that was also the time when when I told you all to remember to be bold, and not to be so, not to be so cautious that, I mean, the very old school thing was, every 10 feet we walk, we're going to test with the pole and we're going to, that's the way it used to be. It was like,
That's right.
you had to do that kind of thing. And it used to take you an hour to walk, to walk 50 feet, because you were doing all of that stuff. And I was like, you're a large party. Remember that you're a large party. You can afford to be bold.
Not to mention the fact that we're a large party, so we're not sneaking anywhere. If they're going to hear us.
Yeah.
Some of us were quiet. I mean, I'm not talking about Alan or anything. Mr. Mr. Bojangles everywhere he went.
Clank, clank. Here come the tank.
Malric, you're up.
Yeah, for some commentary on the players, you mentioned spotlight players. Listen, I can tell many of you, I've had a couple years to know you. I think a lot of you probably are spotlight players when you need to be in other campaigns, especially when there's like 4 or 5 players. Yeah, and that's really the mark of a great player, which is you understand that this is 9 players, 10 players. You just have to recognize that we're all just have a little part in it. So kudos to everyone. It's a rare. Give everyone a compliment. It's rare to get this many players for it to work. Think about this. Obviously, I like to track things, and I track like magic items, and we probably found several hundred magic items. And with 9 players, especially some cross class, I don't recall ever a fight over any single magic item. Everyone was like, "You want that? Great!" Like it just was easy to work with group. Everyone kind of just really just wanted to have fun, and it was and so that's my lead into my story. For me, it was very nostalgic. 45 years before this campaign started, I was probably 7, and I played in Search of the Unknown, and my mom ran my older brother and I through it, and it was such a powerful experience. And so, of course, Richard's first GM module for us was exactly the same module, B1 and Search of the Unknown. I had not seen that module for 4+ decades. For me, when you ran that, it was so nostalgic. From the room of pools to making someone have to map it out based upon your description, and then we're looking at the map and we're screwing it up. Like that's what my mom did too. We were always confused. It was just such a nostalgic moment. I loved it. And for me, it's a non-story, but I think Amalric, on one of the original fights, he had a critical failure and he fell over into a pit. And a lot of players get frustrated when you have this negative moment in the story. But I had a lot of fun with Amalric having a lot of criticals over the years, like just critical failures. And sorry about that, Alan, that I did put your guy unconscious for 2 days. But it was Amalric was like he couldn't stop one critical failures early on. Yeah. And of course, I know I already mentioned the player, Alan, but God, Richard, you couldn't have done that scene better. The poor guy gets paralyzed. He randomly teleports, and of all rooms he teleports into is a room of large spiders. But they would probably just eat him, except that he's paralyzed, so they can't even hear his breathing. So he doesn't roll, and they ignore him.
Yeah. And again, like I mentioned, I think before you came on, the fact that one of you thought to use a detect good, and that's how you would find the missing paladin, was just brilliant. Just like I was like, wow, that's something I wasn't expecting. I remember I was like, what's the range on this thing? Will it be able to like go through the walls? And I was like, you know what? It's such a brilliant idea. And I was like, I'm just going to say that, yeah, that's how you had to traipse around and you eventually found him in there. And I was like I said, I know someone was casting a type of fire spell. It was probably like a burning hands or something on him. And I was like, oh, do I let all this webbing go up and Alan gets crisped
Just put in
anyway?
badly.
Or,
Yes,
do I
Coach.
just, do I just let it go and see what happens? It was a fireball. He was toast.
No,
but,
I think it was Sparrow used like produce flame or something
yeah,
to tear
it
the
was
web
something
down.
like,
Yeah, it was something
yeah,
small.
it wasn't quite a kind of like a projectile fire kind of spell, but I was like, I definitely,
It sort of splashes as it goes,
Yeah.
but it
yeah,
didn't foom.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
In 49 years of
great.
playing,
Hmm.
in 49 years of playing, that's the first time I've ever seen a party use the tech good.
yeah,
It's because the
Interesting,
party is
yeah.
typically looking for evil, and I thought,
Yeah.
well, that's really wild because you never use the tech good because you're not looking for good because you assume everybody's good, and it turned out to be it's like a beacon on the paladin. It's pretty funny.
yeah.
Yep.
No, it was absolutely awesome. Vince, you're up.
So I guess to me, there's three things that really stood out. So first is what you just said. Very first module I ever played was B1. I played Elf because that was the state of the game back then. Second module I ever played was B2, and I played Halfling. It might have been Hobbit back then. I don't remember if it was Halfling or Hobbit. But yeah, so, and again, that was 78, 79 time frame.
Right.
So yeah, decades and decades ago. And then probably for me, it was like a lot of people have said, the bandit attack, because it was the first time the party really worked as a party. And second, that was when Crandon got to do his patented accidentally fall off the back of the wagon and let the bad guys go past him and then sneak behind him and stab him in the back trick. And then probably the third one would be Crandon eviscerating Azerboth, or however you pronounce his name.
Oh yes.
Which he didn't really eviscerate him, but he came in with the killing blow.
Yeah.
On a demon prince.
Yeah. Yeah.
And looked around like,
yeah,
I did that. I did
yeah.
that.
You were the demon lord slayer. Almost stole Breeze's thunder. when you stole it. That was one thing. Like, you guys used to worry about who was going to kill my steal my kills.
I always enjoyed.
Didn't Breeze come in after the killing blow and have another blow? See, I killed it.
Yeah.
I love the fact that on the major killing blows there was always an extra arrow shot from Breeze, and we all knew what that meant. I love that.
I didn't care if they were on the ground with their head turned to mush. I was going to give them one more arrow because they were still twitching.
My favorite kill steal was when I took the white dragon from you, Amalric.
Oh, I don't mind that one bit.
Dragon Slayer.
Doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But I crit. That was the beautiful thing. One attack, one crit, one kill.
For me, when I first started playing, and Alan's paladin got hit with the fear spell or fear effect when we were in that temple.
Yeah.
And the way
he took off running. Yep.
The way he handled it, I knew right then and there. All right, I am with a fantastic group. I don't know if you guys remember, but Fear back in the old days, that was a great way to really get certain players just get really, butt hurt.
Oh yeah,
losing control of their character through fear. And what happens when you're afraid? You wet yourself, you run away. And I don't know if he wet himself because he's wearing armor and he ran so fast.
Well, I saw stuff leaking down his leg of his armor. I don't know what it was, but it was brown.
And the fact that it happened more than once throughout the thing, he just, didn't let it get to him, especially playing the paladin, can't run away. I know a lot of DMs would have, chastised him and tried to mess with him, with the, the Cavalier code and all that nonsense, not really that kind of nonsense. I mean, I like to play paladins quite a bit. But the for me, my favorite, personal moment was that wall, that dome, that globe of force. I know Richard was just like, shit. Especially after a Malric, crit him, and everybody knew the dragon was going to die in 4 rounds. And I'm like, oh, you're not getting away. I mean, you might get a little away, but you're not getting away. And I, no saving throw, globe of force. Now you're our hamster ball, bitch.
Yeah.
And basically, Malric, just finished him off more or less. The globe went down, and there was nowhere to go at that point. 4 rounds is not very long, and I knew even if it went down, he's going to get 1, 2, maybe really lucky 3 rounds away. We'd be able to go, oh, there he's going, as he would crash into the ground. And playing a magic user is not all Gandalf and fireballs. Sometimes it's being very freaking patient, and it was definitely worth the wait.
Yeah. So I mean, I obviously I had the most memorable experiences almost every single session. There was always something that was just like, I was like, wow, this is just, it's impossible to imagine how much fun I had throughout all of this. And, it's hard to say, oh, this one event really stood out. But when I look at it, it was like when the one NPC dwarf was killed, all right, and it was really just 1 pip away from that being Crandon, all right. When that character died, and the way that the party reacted, and was like, and then the other dwarf was going to go away dejected, and you all kind of came together. It was like, no, we're going to chip in. We're going to make sure that this is done. We're going to, avenge him and do all of that. That was, a moment that I was like, wow, they really do role play, and they, I could see the goodness in the party. Let's say at that point there, could really see how you guys were coming together and working together. Your other interactions, like, again, with NPCs and such, like leaving Avante in the storage room and walking off, and your reaction when you first came across the fake Lish in the in Quasqueton, and you were like, I know someone said it was like, I think he's really throwing this at us at second level, and it was just, I mean, I just love the fact that.
Well, we didn't know you then.
You saw all these warning signs around the door. Like, it was like painted in blood in every freaking language to do not enter, warning. It was written in Orcish and Goblin and everything. Don't go in here, and you guys just go right into it anyway.
Of course.
And then you see this Lish, and you're like, well, we're just gonna fight this thing. I was like, holy crap! I was like, it's gonna be so much fun.
Well, if we're going to die, you die fighting.
And there were ghouls. I think ghouls in the room before that, so we could have all been paralyzed from the ghouls because we were so low level too. We didn't really have any way to deal with that either. So it was
and you were fortunate that
Breezy Sparrow.
Yeah, you were fortunate that Zelagar being the crazy person that he was, and gave that was really like a bone golem kind of thing, or a construct.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave him the ability to cast a fear spell that also acted like a turn spell. That's why the ghouls were affected by his fear spell. Once he actually cast it, it sent them to the corner too. That's the one thing that actually saved you from that encounter as well, was that he just chose at that moment to cast a spell and they got caught in the, in the area of effect to it. So that turned in your favor. The other time I really enjoyed the tavern scene in Whitehall when you first encountered that that assassin, and you encountered the assassin. That's when you first met the two dwarves and the half orc, and your realization that the half orc actually wasn't evil, and and you had to kind of break through that stereotype. Meanwhile, the very attractive, half elven, female that walked beyond you, she ended up being, the assassin that you were like, holy crap, like she was the actual one that we were trying to, figure out. And then she made an appearance later on, just another one of those story threads that, didn't
She's the one who gave me that coin.
Yes, she gave Alan the coin, right? She gave the paladin the coin. So that can always be something that we follow through, eventually as well, because that will that's part of some of the other stuff that's potentially going to go forward anyway. So and then let's see. I mean, I really like how I, brought you guys together in the, with the candles and with the thing. I mean, it was probably the most brilliant idea I've had in 57 years. I was like just the idea of how do I bring 10 characters together, such a large group, and have it where it just draws them right into this kind of a story. And the way that you all reacted to it, because you're all in the same, you're all hearing the same thing at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And yet you played your characters as if they weren't, and that's where we created that separation between player knowledge and character knowledge. And it's something that we were able to just keep on, going back to, and keep on, revisiting it until you eventually had it. I mean, you were kind of set. I know one of the exchanges that I had with, I think it was with the Malric, right? With the speak with animals spell, correct? Was it the speak with animals when you tried to cast it? You tried to cast it on a were-rat, and I was like, were-rat's not an animal, so it doesn't work on him. And we went back and forth with it, and I was like, just talk to him in common. Were-rats speak common, and it was like. And again, it was a really important thing, and a memorable moment, because, it pushes that idea of the player knowledge. You've never cast that spell before. You've never encountered a were-rat before. And so it's part of the exploration pillar, right? The exploration pillar is not just exploring geography, or exploring a tomb or something like that. It's exploring your knowledge. It's growing your knowledge as a character. And that, is something that, I've never experienced to the same level outside of this group of players, is that, you all just really, I didn't have to do as much as you would think with 10 players, because you guys just really carried your own weight through, almost all of it. Few bumps here and there, but almost all of it just seamlessly.
That brings me to one thing I don't think anybody has said before that I think we all did admirable, really, is that when it came to like combat and stuff, everybody seemed like they were always ready. They knew what they wanted to do. When it's your turn to tell me what to do,
100%.
it wasn't like, Well, I could do no. It wasn't like that. Everybody knew what they were going to do, and they were ready to go, and that made things a lot smoother, I'm sure, for you.
We
Yeah.
all
Well,
knew
well,
our
and the fun
characters'
thing was like the
ability.
fun thing was after like the fifth or sixth combat,
Mhm.
everybody knew what everybody else was going to do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that you know, you're paying attention to what everybody else is doing. There were times when somebody said, "I'm going to hold off on this to see what whether his spell works or not." And we were able to change up the sequence of the combat based on that. As long as you had initiative, you could switch that up, and you weren't just like, "All right, I just did my turn, and now I can not pay attention to anything else going on." You all actually paid attention to what everyone else was doing. All right. And to be honest with you, that's rare. All right. I don't see that when I look at like other live plays and everything. I don't mean like the professionals, but I'm saying like when I watch other people doing live plays, and a lot of times they're not really paying attention to what others are doing. And so they're just like kind of set into what they were looking to do from the very beginning without any adjustment. And you guys never did that. You guys were always paying attention to what was going on in the action. I didn't have to remind anybody, "Hey, it's your turn." We never had those delays because I would have always said, "You missed your turn. You didn't do anything this round," because you were just standing there idle trying to figure out what you're going to do. Occasionally, you cast a spell that wasn't going to work, but other than that,
That
it
was
was
part of player knowledge and character knowledge.
yeah,
The
Mhm.
character would believe that would probably work. So
Hey, one thing I want to kind of segue to is there's several things that Richard did in this campaign, which those who are watching, I think, are genius moves, and they might seem subtle at first. And so I'll just start off with a couple of them. I loved, maybe I know I'm not necessarily the majority all the time in this. I loved how slow the campaign went in terms of leveling. You did the classic
Mhm.
old school, and here's why that's important. We played 108 sessions. I think I ended up getting to like 8th level. And I can't tell how many times I'm in a campaign and I go from like level 1 in one session to level 3. And I'm like, what happened to level 2? And it's like, I don't want to be level 10 in 10 sessions. I don't really get to know my character. Everyone here, when you leveled after 5 or 8 sessions, first of all, it was a very joyous moment because it took that long, but you really got to develop your character and got to know them. And it was, I don't know, I just think it's fantastic. I don't know, too many GMs rush it. I like the slow, gains, the way you did it. Kudos to you. And then one other comment, you probably forget it because we only did it for a few sessions, probably because you didn't know what kind of players you're going to get. But you actually had a genius rule, which was if in non-combat situations, you would go in order of charisma.
Mhm.
Who goes first? And I think you were trying to like, man, there's gonna be a lot of chaos. I better keep this under control. And it turned out we only needed it for like one session because we just never stepped on each other's feet.
Right.
Yeah, kudos to you.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, there was a few things that I did differently. Like there were some times when I was like, "No, you wouldn't be rolling initiative because you're not the first one that's going to even see that because your party was so stretched out a lot of times that it was like, well, I determined that these are where they're attacking from, so only you three are potentially going to roll initiative, and everybody else is just not in position to act yet. And so that was another thing that I was always trying to think of different ways. Now, getting back to your point when I was using charisma, is yeah, if you're in a social interaction, then charisma is going to be what you're rolling your initiative bonus on, because that's going to be who is the more leadership. And I used several different stats to come up with that too, right? There was times when intelligence was if it was a tactical discussion or something along those lines. So yeah, I think that's important to actually use different different attributes for different situations
Yeah.
as being kind of like the initiative modifier.
And in combat, you use Dex, which made a lot of sense that way. Because I mean, if we had tried to do individual initiative, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah, no, I'd rather do initiative that makes sense.
I love that it took 100 sessions before Alan figured out that I was letting him go first, even though I should have went first, so he would soften my target so I can kill it.
Yeah.
And then once he realized to switch the order, his kill rate went way up.
That was the same. That was the same thing
That's
Breeze
funny.
did. Why do you think I always went? Hey, range. Go ahead, Angus. Because
Yeah,
he
yeah,
would
you were
either
always
kill
letting
the
me shoot
target-
first. Problem
would
was I
either kill
was
the target-
one shot, and then you had nobody to shoot.
Exactly. I mean, if he killed the target, I'd shoot somebody else. If he didn't kill the target, it was probably so close to death, one more arrow is going to do it.
Yeah.
I agree with that comment. Someone wrote in, slow leveling is quite fun.
Yeah, no, it is. That was here.
And it makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. Like in 5e,
Absolutely.
you start at like the first level is like 300 XP. So how do you feel like you've accomplished everything when you one session you level up? Okay, I leveled up. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's why I'm
To me, quick leveling actually takes a lot of the fun out of the game.
Milestone
I
leveling,
agree.
I think,
Yeah.
is a pox on is a pox on the. It's one of the worst things in 5e is milestone leveling, and
even the other method, if you don't use milestone in 5e, I think it's still everybody has the same XP table. That's not any fun. I think that I like the fact that we don't all level at the same time.
Yeah, I love hearing Alan complain all the time how it took forever for him. That was,
And I like the fact that Druid is one of the fastest leveling classes.
Yeah, and well, I mean, I look at it like Kelly. He's got about 6 levels of Bard that he could get if he only had the time to actually train.
Train.
To get there.
I'm hanging out there going, I know a lot of stuff. I just don't know how to use it yet.
Yeah, he has a lot of excess experience points. He just hasn't had the opportunity to actually train to do it because he's been so busy, adventuring that you just don't have time to do it. That's another thing I really like about 1E is that it does have a cost to leveling it up, and it makes you think about it. It makes you have to spend the time. I like the fact that it will. If your character goes into negatives and you have to bounce back, it takes you a full week to recover, which gives everybody else a chance to actually, to actually train, so it gives them some downtime as well. I liked how it does give you the sense of there's something to be done in between adventures, and so that's, an important thing that I think, AD&D does well, is that fact, also. And it's just it's a great system to do a long campaign in. And not every system is good for that. There's some systems like, I look at like Shadow Dark. Shadow Dark is the perfect system to do a one shot. It's a perfect system to do a 4-hour adventure session with. But can it carry for a very long campaign? First of all, it stops at like level 10, and I think it's a fairly fast system to level up as well. Is it better than some of the other, rules light kind of games? Probably yes, because it does some other things that are very old schoolish. But the point is that could you do a 2-year campaign with that system? Absolutely not. There are very, very few game systems out there that can carry a 2-year long or more, campaign. I mean, Kelly, I know you're running a very long campaign with a different
I've got
system.
3 long-term campaigns, but I start my fantasy game I've been running since 74. I still run it once or twice a month, and it started out in D&D, '87, I switched it over to GURPS, and I ran GURPS until 2001, and I now run it using Savage Worlds. But the characters max out and they become epic pretty, over 3 years, 4 years. So they kind of have to either go in the semi-retirement. So even though
Right.
it's the same players, the characters are. My fantasy world, they're on the seventh generation of characters. So they've gone through 7 generations. I mean, they're playing 230 years into the game. So, but D&D is one of the few campaigns, but even so, D&D, you have a breakdown once it gets into the 12 to 15, 18 level, it starts breaking down because at that level, like you said, it's more campaign mode of, managing your kingdom, so to speak.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Although I do have some ideas for your, because you guys are really like in that technically that 12 to 14 range because of the size of the party. There are a few mini campaigns that are slated for that, right? You could, I mean, I wouldn't run against the Giants, but that's the kind of campaigns that you're kind of ready for, is to do like against the Giants or, the Vault of the Drow adventure, all of those ones that
Bloodstone Pass.
are end, but they're
It's
not.
It's not too late.
One of the things I don't know that anybody's mentioned and I thought was brilliant that you came up with was the idea of the infused magic items, or the magic items that are attuned to the character.
Yes, grow with you. That's in other game systems that do that, though. I mean, D&D doesn't do it. I forget what game system actually does that. Has attuned
Earth Dawn. Earth
Dawn does that. Yeah, but that's right. Earth Dawn does that. I know Max told me, he was like, "Hey," well, because he heard me talking about that. He was like, "Yeah, they do that in Earth Dawn."
Some games have a trademark weapon where you have a specific weapon you keep and you develop a relationship with and know it well enough, you get bonuses to hit and damage. But Savage World Deadland does that. But
so I know the original idea. It was something that I've heard about and might have even seen it before. And I just thought it played, the idea of it played well into the campaign's underlying story. Like at some point I realized, I was like, no, I want them to actually clash with these demon lords. Like I thought of the Frog God, and I thought of, like, I found that adventure long before I came across the Dark Druids one. I came up with the Dark Druids before even knowing there was a module called the Dark Druids. I was like, oh, this is really cool. When I finally found it, I was like, all right, I've been doing this for like 3-4 months now, and now all of a sudden I found a module that kind of supports that idea. I didn't make Zeligar an arch lich until probably about 5 sessions before the Plague Dragon. I was like, oh, you know what? This is what I'm going to do with him. I'm going to put him in a tomb, and it's going to be underneath the dragon's lair. That's going to be the real big thing there. And I just started connecting some of the dots that I left scattered all over the place, and just kind of bringing it to, bringing it to an end point. Like, how do I get you back into Quasqueton? That's where I started saying, how am I going to, finish this circle and get you back to where you began your journey, and then once I started taking a greater look at the map of Quasqueton, I was like, oh, shit, right here, because I just didn't glance at it the last time. I just didn't pick up on it. The passageway to Rogan's tomb. And I was like, oh shit, now I have that connection that we can eventually, expand into, at a later time. But virtually everybody in this group, if not everybody in this group, is in my upcoming Castles and Crusades campaign. So we're gonna try to capture lightning in the bottle a second time, and this time with a different game system. So that'll be interesting to see how well Castles and Crusades supports a very similar group of players, but with some different characters now. So that'll be interesting to see as well. And see, we have it's another large party. It's 10 players again.
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
yeah.
let's make some comments on that. So, obviously, I'm not one of the players that's continuing, but I will be back. I guarantee you. It's funny. I think we forget, but we started this back in the COVID work from home days, and I always say this. I don't know why it is. I know Shadow, you're in California as well, but it's like I'm back in the office now, so that's why I'm late tonight. It's like it's tough. This now the weeknights are tough for me to make, and so I'm actually envious of all you guys on the East Coast. And they're like, okay, it's getting midnight. I'm like, oh, I'd kill to have a game from 9 to midnight, but that's really the only hesitancy, and it's why I can't do it. It's just very hard. It's hard when I'm actually still at work, which is not at home. But I'll say a couple of things before we jump off the items. I'm going to give a shout out to Breeze. Boy, playing his character true, he had this whole thing about the armor, like twice in the game. When he didn't have the money for the Elven Chain, we found Elven Chain. He's like, I don't want it. I'm getting the special one for my family. And then when we found the magical Elven Chain later, you never see this in a game. Player goes, oh, I got regular Elven Chain or I get magical. He's like, he didn't even think about it. He's like, no, that's not my family element. He had a whole backstory in his character, built on it. And he played Breeze. Mountainside, you just did a great job of really keeping the character, even when it didn't benefit you. And that's just magical to me to allow us. It makes me. I feel like I know your character that better.
Yeah, I think you even mentioned one time that I had gone something like 50 sessions without claiming any group loot because all of it was junk. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. That's junk. So I went like 50 sessions without claiming a single piece of party treasure.
Hey, talking about items, you guys probably didn't notice this. You guys kept trying to give them to me but I wanted to go the entire campaign doing two things, and you probably don't know what they are. One is I didn't want to drink a single potion, which I was successful. That's why I never claimed any potions. And I understand I'm a spell user, but I never did a ranged weapon once. No arrows, no crossbows. It was kind of cool. That was my thing. Go ahead,
Lightning
Alan.
bolts count?
No, I meant like other than spells, but I didn't want to do any other weapons. Hey, one of the fun things one of my more fun components about the game was the system shock rolls. Oh my gosh. Listen, I won't lie to you. I even wrote them down. Like session 44, I had to make it against a call lightning. Session 61, Black Dragon Breath. Session 67, Ogre hits me with a crit of a club. Session 73, Human Fighter, Evil Sword. And then Session 100, Plague Dragon. And what's interesting is my con actually wasn't that good. It was like a 12. So like it's a good chance I could fail. It's not the majority chance. I want to say it's like 20, 25%. But when you have a character you've played for 50, 100 sessions, you're like, oh gosh, this can come up. This could be it. I sweated it out every time. And one of the times, I think I wrote exactly what I needed. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't have a percent.
So you were the one that rolled like a 41. Yeah, it was like because that's exactly what you needed was a 41.
Oh, it was crazy. So I enjoyed it. I'm glad I survived my by odds, I should not have been alive at the end because I had way too many of those. But they're very memorable. And
like I mentioned, because someone asked, did everyone survive? And I was like, everyone survived, but there were 28 instances where one bad roll and you were dead, and there was only one resurrection spell, not a resurrection, raised dead spell that you had access to, during all of that time, so when in 108 sessions, you had 29 or 28, 29 potential character
Near
deaths.
deaths. Yeah, near
You know,
deaths.
and so percentage-wise, it's pretty darn high when you think about it, and the fact that some of them happened like and I don't know if you were here at the time, Amalric, when I said it, but there were 2 instances where there could have definitely been a group wipe. All right, that was the Plague Dragon, and or possibly 3. Actually, I'll say 3. The first one was if you guys decided to attack the Brass Dragon. You know, so that was the first one. You know, but I never anticipated that you would attack the Brass Dragon. You know, I just didn't think you would. But if you did, that would have been like, oh shit! All right, they just attacked the Brass Dragon. He's going to
As a player, I knew it would be a very bad idea. But Breeze wanted that. You know, he was like, I ain't never killed the brass dragon before. This is gonna be fun. And they're like, no.
So that was the first one. That was a potential, I guess. The second one was the second one, which wasn't anticipated actually, but it was the Younger Hope almost like he could have, because he confused.
He charmed everybody.
Yeah, he had everybody confused. So you guys were kind of lucky there. But the other one was the Plague Dragon, which
that was session 100.
Yeah, that was session 100. So yeah, what a way to celebrate, you know, the 100th session is by having such a, you know, a monumental creature to fight. And if you, Amalric, didn't kill that thing in basically 4 rounds, if he wasn't on that timer, you would have, you know, would have been very different. And if he dropped the 3 of you, that battle would have really gone the wrong way.
So I'm looking at my notes. Amalric escaped death twice with lucky rolls because he has to make a saving throw and he needs an 11 unmodified. That's 50-50. And the damage that thing did would just kill Amalric outright. So Amalric rolled, he makes the saving throw, but the damage is now more than half his hit points. So then he has to do the same shock roll. Again. It's like, I'm like, what? I just saved versus death. I gotta do it again?
Yeah.
It's funny.
And I think when I get hit with that dragon's breath, I think I had already taken some damage. So you're like, roll your save for half. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm still dead.
Yeah.
What matters if we can find your body.
And then the last one was the last one was Eligard. If anybody decided, you know, I'm just going to attack this Archlich, and you know, I don't think that very many people could have handled his you know, his 22d6 you know,
Fireball.
lightning bolt. It was like or
The
his
fireball take out the whole party.
Yeah, or fireball. Yeah, fireball would have basically, you know, eliminated everybody. You know, and you know, so that was a thing. Yeah, I don't know whose mic was.
Did I make a? I don't remember making a saving throw for system shock. I don't know if I did or didn't. I can't remember.
I don't remember if you had to. I think in one of the battles you came close.
Yeah, I don't remember actually doing it.
It may have also been one where he was not physically on, but we were carrying his character.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly. There was a time when you took a crap load of damage. But I don't think it was
I remember hurting myself with a critical, but I didn't take that much damage, but I hurt myself.
Yeah. All right. So let's see.
Yeah. Angus, you took 30 out of 80 hit points, so that's what happened. I'm looking at my notes.
Yeah.
30 out of 80. Yeah.
Problem is 30 is more than my half, so.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, I always had a lot of hit points.
30 was almost what I ever had, period.
Well, Richard, I had a great time. I want to thank you again. I'm going to get ready to head to bed, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no
yeah,
worries.
you have a good one. I know it's
But
Seeing you again, man.
I look
5 a.m. now,
forward.
right?
I look forward to the Castles and Crusades game.
Well, that'll be next
starting
week.
Next week.
will-
Yep.
That starts next week. We're ready to go. I think I just got Sparrow's character at. I
I
think she
posted
just,
mine.
yeah. So
I
I
just
will
posted mine.
I will finalize those and take a look. I'm already trying to figure out how I bring 10 players together.
Kelly, before you book, I want to say I always really enjoyed the stories from TSR of old.
Mhm.
So to kind of have a little bit of behind the scenes action was pretty cool. So I really did enjoy our conversations, and whenever we were waiting for players and you kind of would talk of what it was
Oh,
like.
absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
If you ever want to chit chat, of course, if you're not in the Castles Crusade game, you can still just hit me up on Discord. We can talk anytime.
Well,
Hey,
two things. Number one is
yeah.
before you leave. Number one is I already know because Shadow showed me how to do it. Session 50, I could easily enter. Number one, and then two, I'm expecting this campaign just to put a bow for now. I am sure at some point in time, nostalgically, Richard will say, "Hey, this summer, let's do a 4-session thing called G1 or whatever," and just for a kind of a change of pace. I am sure we will all, wherever we're at on the planet, we're all going to gather and do it. And to me, I like to think that this will
there will
continue
definitely
forever.
be, we will definitely revisit these characters and do the next thing. We will do the Tomb of Rogan, and check that out. We will tie up some of those loose ends and everything. I'm not erasing anything that we have, on there. So I will have everyone's character sheets and and I have
Very good.
booklets and binders of everything that you've covered, and a lot of learning experience in keeping track of all this stuff. Now I was like, all right, now that I've done this, I'm going to actually keep a log, on the computer instead of just handwriting this stuff out, and just keep on updating that and sharing that so that everybody can kind of see and contribute and do that kind of a thing to it as well. So it's just a matter of managing stuff. But both you and Vince, you are welcome to join at any time. One thing I have learned is how to integrate new players into, a campaign and make it make sense, make it work, and you're welcome to join in anytime that your schedule permits it. I fully expect that the group will go. The group will continue marching along, and with it, like I said, a new game system. See how it works out. Never played Castles and Crusades or ran Castles and Crusades with more than 5 players. So it'll be cool. It'll be cool to see, and waiting to see what else Troll Lord Games puts out that I can easily integrate. So I already have a set campaign for it. As far as the Castle's Ajig kind of thing. So, and I just have to modify it to match what I kind of like to do with stuff. Is I don't like to use straight up pre-made modules. I like to steal their maps basically because I'm horrible at map making, and then just change the stories up and just make it our own.
Well, very cool.
I may be there if I can get my Tuesdays freed up.
One last thing I want to say, Richard, is if we all ever get a chance and there's a convention somewhere, we can all kind of get together.
Oh, that'd be good. Good call.
Meet you all in person. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
VentureCon in July.
I'm actually going to be running a
4 or 5
convention in 2025. I'll be holding a convention in Texas, so I'll keep you guys posted. That would be a fantastic.
What part of Texas?
I don't know yet.
I said VentureCon in July in sunny Wisconsin.
I want to do it. I want to do it close to Reaper, so that if I time it right, it'll be like right before or right after ReaperCon. So some of us can, have an extended vacation of, nonstop gaming.
Well, ReaperCon and North Texas Con are fairly close together too.
Oh yeah, I
Both in
forgot
North
about
Dallas.
Texas.
Both in North Dallas, and North
Yeah,
Texas Con is supported by a lot of OSR and old school
Yeah.
TSR people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll figure out where, guys. But I definitely want to meet you all
All right.
in person sometime. And
You have
I'll
a
be
good one,
back.
Kelly.
I come back to the States at least 4 or 5 conventions a year.
Take care.
All right.
Yep.
Later,
Have a
guys.
good one.
Richard.
Good night.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone. And so I'm doing I'm starting to include like the Philadelphia conventions into my circuit there. So I'm going to the Philadelphia Game Expo just as a player, and then I'm also doing some one in Massachusetts. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, I would love to actually all come together in one thing. I've looked at some of the Wisconsin ones. They're just too far. They're just that's like a 15-hour drive. I can't do that.
I'm doing 20 hours to go to mine.
Ridiculously cheap, and then I could fly. But yeah, I looked into them, and I was like, I really wanted to go to VentureCon, the first one. Actually, Cedric went to the first one, so he went to that one, and had a good time and everything. I would have loved to have been there, but it just didn't play out. That time, it was like the airfare was like $500 round trip. I was like, wow, that's
cheap.
You think that was like. No, the whole thing would have ended up costing me like $1,200. I'm
spending that on gas this year.
Huh?
I said I'm driving 20 hours to get there. I'm probably spending that on gas.
Yeah, I was just like, at the time, I was like, nah, I can't do. I couldn't do it. And actually, it wasn't 500 round trip. It might have been 500 one way. But that first one was like 2021, right? VentureCon
so,
1. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I haven't. This will be the first one I've gone to, but I think it's VentureCon 3 this year.
Yes, yeah, it's 3 this year. He said, I know he mentioned that he said he might do an East Coast one or maybe an Ohio one or something like that. I know some of you are down south. You're, further down. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm in Tennessee.
Whether Pennsylvania's close enough or whatever. I know that Breeze.
Philadelphia is only 5 hours for me and Leah.
So that's not even that's not terrible. And I know the one that's in Massachusetts, I think, is what, 3 hours from you, Breeze? You're muted.
Yeah, at least 3 hours. I mean, I can get to New York in about 3.5 hours if I have good traffic.
Yeah.
But it takes 2 hours just to get out of Maine.
Well, it could take 10 hours to get out of New York. That's how big New York is. So
and that's just going across the bridge.
Yeah.
A couple other quick shout outs. First, Leia, I thought you did an amazing job with your druid. Very believable. I've seen so many people play druids, and it's just not believable. Like, you are Sparrow. Like, it was just perfect. And especially when we started the whole Black Druid thing, that's why I think everyone just kind of stood back and let you just kind of lead that whole process and how we were going to go through it. So
I totally
really
agree.
enjoyed it. Thank you for really just jumping into your character, from the items you picked up to how you played her. Just totally in your character. Vince, I missed you as a rogue. Rogues are hard to play in a 10-player or 9-player game, right? Like, you want to sneak off and do your own thing, and you played that rogue perfectly, and I enjoyed that and missed you when you left. Shadow, I know you're about to leave. Little fun story. I always play Arcane for long-term campaigns, And I normally play single class. So the story behind my multi-class was I was in Orbs, going to play a magic user, but then Word wanted to play a single class magic user, and they didn't have any fighters. So I was like, well, okay, I'll do a multi-class. And then I get into this campaign, and I was like, there wasn't a lot of fighting. So I was like, well, I guess I'll keep the multi-class. And plus Cedric, your predecessor, wanted the single class magic user. So I'm like, okay. So I stayed multi. But the reason I enjoyed you coming in is because I actually enjoyed, you could tell the way I played them all, like I enjoyed just doing the bashing. It was a nice change of pace for me. And so when you weren't there between Cedric and you, obviously I did a lot more magic user stuff, right?
Right.
And you coming in allowed me to be like, okay, that's his role. He's got it. And I could tell you're a very experienced player and knew the spells inside and out. And so anyway, I just enjoyed everyone. Finally, Mirador and Alan, you were like, for those who didn't know, they were always the people on the side that would write me messages like, are you there? You session playing? What are you going to do? You know, and so thanks for keeping me on, schedule. And I really enjoyed the banter back and forth. Thank you very much. And small world, Mirador, what's the chances? There's 3,000 four-year colleges in the U.S. and we went to the same college. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. What's
Crazy.
weird though is that he was there 2 years ahead of me. And we both, I guess, Gabe did college, but we never were in the same group. We never met each other until
another state.
We found out afterward that we went.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, that's crazy. I probably walked right by you many times.
Yep.
Okay, everybody.
And yes, Mountainside, I enjoyed your banter. Your banter was great. Thanks GM, for this, Richard.
And we will always be in touch. And I'm looking forward to next week's game. And we will do some kind of a, whether it be recaps or maybe some live plays or whatever, because I know some people, certainly recaps. We'll definitely do recaps and probably stick more towards that than doing live plays. But hey, if you want to do live plays, we could do those too. But I'd rather, I think we're probably best off with recaps, at least until we kind of get our feet under us with the new game system and still 10 players and all. So, but anyway, thanks everyone for coming in, and thanks for all of those that have been watching and chatting and such. And hey, we went 3 hours, so that's a long live stream. So thanks everyone. And so no recap this Thursday.
So we get our 400 experience points, right?
Yes, you gained 400 experience points, for this session, and Amalric.
I was gonna ask
Amalric,
that.
you can upgrade. You can.
Yeah, I'll put it out. Don't worry.
Somebody will probably go up a level.
Not me.
Right.
Probably the bard.
Oh,
Yeah.
Alan's character will go up a level, but everybody else's might. All right. You all have a great night. And
Happy trails, everybody.
Yep.
Happy
Have a good one, everyone.
Okay.
See you Tuesday.
Take care.
Bye-bye.